phone or something? No? How
What's
did
that?
you notice we weren't broadcasting?
No, I
There we
wouldn't
go.
go on.
Oh, your mic wouldn't go on.
No, I couldn't turn it on.
In all fairness,
Sorry.
I usually hit that button for Tom, so it's my fault.
Oh, no,
Okay.
that's okay.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So I don't know if we'll have some public comments, but before I open up for public comments, I just wanted to say a couple things. So I'm hoping that these type of meetings can be a little less formal. As a matter of fact, I'll try not to, be Commissioner Udis, Commissioner Stefanelli, Commissioner Ball, all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that we can have a more calm discussion because I'm getting an echo. I'm hoping that some of the items that we're talking about here today are things that aren't regular city business type items. They're items that we haven't, maybe the city's never taken action on in the past. So the reason I'm saying that is, if we were to not do anything with any of these items ever, all we do is maintain the status quo. So I'm hoping that we can have a good discussion back and forth, still be formal, be respectful, be kind. But my point is, whatever your opinion is, or anybody's opinion, there is no definite right or wrong, right? Because we're looking how we can try to improve things. Same thing with residents, if they come up and speak at meetings like this, it is constructive to say things that they think an idea is a bad idea, but I'd rather have, I don't like the idea because of this, and I prefer us to do it because of this, or something like that. That's more constructive, right? So at the end of the day, hopefully we can get some good discussions done, but we do want to eventually get to the point where we get some actions. Okay. First up, public comment on agenda items only. Am I echoing?
Yeah, a little bit. Can I ask a question?
You can public comment on anything.
I don't understand the process of this.
Do you want to come to the front?
Sure.
Yeah, come to the podium.
Sure.
I don't understand the process of this meeting.
Okay.
You're treating it like a regular council meeting. So my question is, when stuff comes up, does the audience get a chance to ask you questions, or give their opinion, or?
Well,
It's like you're asking for public comments. Now, I don't have a public comment, but I might have one when a certain topic comes up. So I don't understand how
Sure.
this is gonna be run.
So my thought process is, if you look at the action items here on everything that's on the agenda, there's nothing that we're approving necessarily tonight. There's no money being spent on anything. So that's why after you hear us talk, or any resident hears something or watches something on Facebook, if they have a feedback later on, they always can come, because there'll be another, let's say there's something we want to adopt in here, right? That'll be done at a regular council meeting, and then people will have a chance to come and speak about that, if they have any questions or something like that. But generally, there's usually not a back and forth, but I would encourage a back and forth a little bit more in something like this, because these might be topics we've never discussed before in the city.
I agree with you. I mean, this is not a council meeting per se. This is, what I thought it was gonna be was that if, citizens have an issue or whatever, they can bring it up, and try to get an answer.
We absolutely,
Yeah, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Jay, it absolutely is a council meeting. Anytime two or more of these guys get together, it's gotta be a council
Yep.
meeting
Yeah.
under the law, so it is a council.
let me try.
But it has to have some structure.
Let me try my version of it.
Okay.
So, I do think this is a better forum for that kind of stuff, but we, as all five of us, cannot legally get in a room anymore to have a talk about city business without it being a city council meeting.
Okay,
So that's the reason.
that's just a formality.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So, okay, I understand it, but the structure of a council meeting doesn't allow, or does not, if a citizen gets up here and asks a question or something, you guys do not have to answer it. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
When I first started coming to meetings, I would hear people come up and ask questions, and you guys would never answer them. That's kind of, you know what I mean? But then I realized that you don't have to per some rule.
Mhm.
So my question is, so I'm still kind of confused.
Sure.
So you say you want it to be, you didn't use the word like that, but interaction. Do you want interaction? So when something comes up, can we speak to that?
I would prefer that we have interaction with our council here. Now, because, normally, I would not want to go to the audience during a regular type meeting because it would interrupt the meeting. But I would say if somebody had feedback or something like that, any member of the council, technically, I mean, the official thing you would do would be a point of order, and you'd ask for a point of privilege, and the person can come up and speak. I don't think in a meeting like this that we have to go quite that far. If somebody raised,
Hand might be a good idea.
that's what I'm saying, and I've done that before, even when I was in the audience when Finley was mayor. I'd raise my hand, and he would motion that you come up and speak or something like that. So,
I just wanna know how it works, you know what I mean?
my goal is that, my goal is to have our regular meetings as professional and formal as we can to get stuff done, but sometimes there's gonna have to be a little bit more back and forth discussion about some topics that are kinda complicated, or maybe they're things that they've never been happening in the city before. And I think you need to have a forum where we can have a little, I don't wanna say debate, but back and forth. Yeah, give and take. And- Sure, please.
Jay, one of the other things is that if we did all this during a regular council meeting, we could go all night, because you,
First of all, I totally understand. I think we're getting off. I totally understand. When I learned that you guys do not have to answer questions during council meeting, at first I thought, that's rude. But then I realized also that, if you did answer questions, you could, it could get out of the context of what the meeting was. I understand that. So I guess, here again, I'm just wondering, I guess I had envisioned this particular meeting, the way it was described, and maybe I'm wrong, as, some, citizen involvement in it. But here again, like I say, you're going through the process of, like, you say, anybody got any, what do you say, this?
Public comment?
So if you look,
I don't have a public comment now until I hear what's going on, then I might.
okay.
We have another
There's two of them on, there's two of them on here on the agenda. The reason that is that is in our ordinance, the basic format of how we do, meetings. We'll have a public comment on agenda items and then a public comment over anything. It's actually in our ordinance to do
Okay,
that.
That's cool. I do not know much about, city government, nor do I want to know really much about it, to be honest.
That's okay.
You know what I mean? Here again, I'm just asking the question because all of a sudden, I guess I thought it was gonna be a little more laid back, a little more
Well,
whatever, but,
Well, it's our first one ever.
I
So,
hear you.
so I hope it is a little bit more laid back and we can have that communication. The other thing I was gonna say is even though the 5 people up here are ultimately responsible for making the final decision on where we go, I'm not foolish enough to think that we have all the answers here, especially when it's something that's maybe never happened in the city before. And that's where I think input comes back. Although, I'll be honest, if we're in the middle of talking amongst the council here, and there's 5 hands being raised, and yet we're still talking, I don't know if I wanna engage the public when I wanna make sure that the council members have their opportunity.
and I understand that, but at least give those 5 hands, people a chance. That's, I guess, here again, all I was asking was how this is gonna be run, because all of a sudden, I see it like your typical, councilman.
Well, it still
Again,
has to be Robert's Rules of Order, Jay. I mean, we still have to follow that format.
And we,
Okay,
and we,
so I'm learning that.
and again, it has to be a council meeting, because legally, if 5 of us are sitting in a room, we have to do that.
I get that, so, I mean, but here again, I'm learning.
Sure.
I'm learning, so, you know, I just hope that, so I just asked that question because all of a sudden, I thought it was gonna be a lot more laid back, a lot more,
Interactive?
I'm wearing shirts and I'm trying to be.
whatever, but, hey,
Sounds good.
let's just proceed and
Sounds good,
Thanks,
Jay.
Jay.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other public comments on agenda items only?
Yeah, I want to comment on what you got down for the nuisance ordinance. And instead of a nuisance ordinance, why can't we change it to a no burn ordinance?
I think you'll be happy about some of the stuff we're gonna talk about tonight.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I've lived there since '74, and people are still burning. And everything you put out for the people that pick it up, they take it. So if we're buying bags for $1.50 with all of our leaves and our grass and everything in it, let's just continue to do that only. Because my next step is, I'm going to the cancer about time, if we got all these ordinances on the books, and we're paying the lawyer all the money to write up these ordinances, let's start charging people for it. I'll give $100 for every one that I'm wrong. I've made this offer several times. Come on, let's go for a ride, and I'll show you. 20 feet. There's some people, their burn barrel right here, here's their building. That can't be, it's gotta be more than 20 feet. And most people's yards in Oglesby, you can't get 20 feet away from every single building and still burn. It's not gonna happen. My lot is 60 by 70. There's no way I could put a burn barrel. But yet, I can take you all over town because I drove all over town and seen it. People are still using it. And we shouldn't have burning. What's the purpose of it?
All right, thank you. Okay, next on the item is discuss, place on file, and/or possibly approve amended economic developer ordinance. So what I have here for everybody is, you'll see, I have the current economic developer ordinance. That's what got approved back in 2019. I think so far there's been a total of 2 people that have ever filled the role. One of them's with us here tonight, and then I think the last person that held the job was maybe 3.5 years ago. So, and if you do recall, about 2 years ago, we incorporated the economic developer role into the clerk's contract. The most recent contract we approved, that is not a specific item that's in there. So the clerk's contract says as needed, so in other words, until we have it filled, the clerk is kind of acting in that capacity. So if we don't do anything about it, this is our current ordinance we have. As you can see, it's kind of vague about what it says it does. There is a price rate in there that I don't know if we could even hire somebody for that. The next item you have is one that has a whole bunch of little red items I put on it, and I put things in green to modify it a little bit. And this is where I'd love to hear some feedback, if they like that. I left a range in there for the wage, because maybe it's something that's negotiable. I know Rich and I have had a conversation that his concerns are if we can get all these things that we want to do with an economic developer, for that kind of money even, especially for a part-time position, which is a concern. So I was kind of curious what people's thoughts are on that, because what I'd like to do is try to get somebody in for an economic developer that can do all of those functions. If we cannot find somebody, I do have a backup plan, which would be, we would create a job title for just a grant writer alone, because there are some services that you can do outside of the city where somebody can come in and do all your grant finding and grant writing for you. The concern I have with that is that they're not local to us and they're here. I don't know if they'll know about our specific issues that we need to hunt for. So, floor is open. Anybody have any comments on any of that?
One comment I have is, I understand why you're structuring at the 990 hours, but I don't know whether we need to tie ourselves into that. Worst case scenario, we hit 1,200 hours, and if we have the work and for them to do, I don't care if we have to put into IMRF for that employee or not. And I know that was their intention of staying at the 990, was for the IMRF retirement benefit, but I mean, I just really don't think that's a reason to hold back. If we have work for that person to do, I think it's such important work that we shouldn't hold them to, you know, if they're at 989 hours and we have a huge company that's coming in here, now we say, hey, you can't work anymore because you're at 989 hours for the year.
If you look at if you look at it, so it's written in a way to where, this is one of the items that I have changed in here. It's written to where they only work up to 990, and if for some reason we feel that they need to go over, what it says in there is the mayor can authorize to go over, but then it has to make the council aware that authorize that. So my thought process is, if we get somebody in here and they're, after 6 months, they're working and stuff like that, and for some reason they can prove the fact that because of their efforts, we got a 50,000, even if it's small grants. Don't get me wrong, my ultimate goal is to get a grant for the wastewater treatment plant. But if I can get 50,000 grant for this, 150,000 grant for that, 400,000 grant for that, this person has proved their worth in that. So that way I'd be happy with extending those hours to pay into those IMRF benefits.
Other question I have, Jason, is I don't know, I'm not in the space enough to know what a typical economic developer gets per hour. So my question is, did you just come up with these numbers? Did you do some research to, with surrounding communities to see what they're paying their economic developers? Because when I'm doing the math, let's say we had a full-time employee in these roles at $30 an hour, would be at 62,400 working 40-hour weeks. And it would be 72,800 at $35 an hour. Is that something that's in the ballpark of what economic developers are making, or?
So the problem is, there's not a lot of people that have economic developers that are a part-time role, is the concern. So there are some that, it depends on the size of the city, it could be 80, it could be anywhere between 80 and 100,000. So if you were to have, like, for example, I hate to even say I don't even wanna say the numbers out loud, because I don't know what we're gonna negotiate for. But it could be for a size of our city to be somewhere between 70 and 80,000 for full-time. But because we're looking to hire a part-time person, and that's what Rich had some concerns about, could we find somebody even that would wanna
That's what I'm
come here
wondering,
to
too.
do that? I don't know if I can find somebody for that level of skill that we're looking to get. I want somebody with credentials and somebody that knows all the systems out there that you can get the grants from and stuff.
Well, I don't think we're gonna get anybody with really good grant writing skills really for this price tag, especially in a part-time position. That's such a specialized space. I think you're gonna have a hard time finding somebody. That's just my gut. I mean, I can't
You're probably
prove
gonna
that.
need somebody that's already doing that full-time somewhere and is willing to take on a part-time role. I think that's,
But
that
like
rate.
Jason said before, I think you said you're not really in favor of that, because then it puts them in a position where if I'm the economic developer full-time for Peru and I'm working for Oglesby part-time, and I have a big company come in, is my allegiance to Peru, or is it to the city of Oglesby? So, you know, you have some,
So there's two names I have already in mind, but I'd like to put it out there to see what else is out there. The two people I have in mind, there's one person that works for a very large company that does this for a large company, and they do live locally here. I don't know all of their skill sets, if they would be something that they'd wanna do this part-time here, because they work from home doing this from a large company. But like you said, yeah, I'd be concerned somebody that's representing LaSalle or Peru or Utica, because I wanna make sure that who we're paying money into is going to be looking out for Oglesby's interest. I don't want us to necessarily develop to try to steal from other communities, but I wanna make sure that Oglesby's looked after.
I understand.
So if your concern is the range, that's why I kinda left that blank. If everybody was good with all the other language here, we could always go out for a job description and see who we could find, and then once we negotiate the rate, we wouldn't hire them until we approve the contract, obviously. That's another option.
I guess my thought process also is that there might be the right person out there who we need at $40 an hour. That's what they demand for a salary based on their work experience and their accolades.
And-
So are we putting the cart in front of the horse to put a dollar range before we find out how qualified that candidate is to hold the position? Because if you get somebody who's fairly new at this, and yeah, I think $30 an hour is fair. If you get somebody who has 20 years' experience doing this and can show you that they've accomplished this, and this for this other community, and now they want to, you know, kind of go back a little bit on their hours and take this job and retire from their full-time job, man, that's a hell of a skill set coming to us.
It is, and then it's tough to get them for that rate, I understand.
I just don't want to price this out of the
That's why.
right candidate.
That's why, well, keep in mind, we can't approve, this is just a draft format, there's red marks all over it and everything like that. My thought process is if we're good with the wording on it, and it's just the range, we could always go out and hire, like, for example, Tony and I could do interviews on people or something like that, and if we thought we had the best candidate, and we negotiate a rate, then we would approve the contract at that point before they would start.
So this is not a hard number, is what you're telling me?
No,
Okay,
no.
fair enough.
And if you look at the green writing, the only thing I added was, you know, I didn't want, it used to just say economic development. I wanted to expand that to say economic development, grant discovery, grant writing, and even managing event coordinator employees. And I think that's about the only change in there. But again, if we can't find the right skill set, the only other thing I can think of is that we do go with a grant writing service for like a firm or something like that, which I think they would do a great job, except I don't know if they'll know the specific problems that we have in Oglesby, how to apply them, because apparently there's thousands of grants all over the place.
Wouldn't we request what we're looking for? I mean,
we don't know sometimes.
We could, but that's the thing. We need somebody out there, like, for example, I think NCICG does a great job managing grant applications. They really do. The problem is, they have to know about the grant first to give it to us. There's so many things I see that other communities are getting grants, and we didn't even know that it was something we could apply for. That's what I need, we need to pay somebody to be finding all of those opportunities for us.
So one thing, I think this is a step in the right direction. I definitely think that there would be value in somebody bringing grants, and the only thing that I would have to see to give me peace of mind is that if we get into something like this, that we're still able to address wherever we may have other needs. Like I know the electrical department is still down a person, and we still have to fill the vacancy with parks, I believe. So I just wanna know that going down this path, that we still have the financial flexibility to take care of, you know, our openings as they are right now. I'm not opposed to this, I'm not saying that at all.
The reason I was excited about the fact that it's part-time, because if the position can justify itself just in the grant discovery and grant award process from year to year to year, the position pays for itself in that regards. And then I have no problem with expanding it into a full-time position. Right now, I'd have a hard time justifying somewhere between a $70,000 and $90,000 job, full-time with benefits, when we don't know what the return on that investment necessarily is, because it's never been done before in the city.
Do we know what a company that would actually do this for us would cost?
I have not talked to them yet, but I have a contact at the State Department that can put me in contact with, I have not gone that route yet.
Probably
Because
be a
I
good
wanted to-
idea to weigh everything.
You want me to look into, you think you'd rather look into the options if grant writers are available first? Because I still think, in my opinion, the best situation is finding somebody that has all of these skills that can do in-house.
Well, we're looking to see if it works out for us. If we use a company that does that regularly every day, we could see if it's gonna work. You know what I'm saying?
We also have an option out at the college that we should look into. There's
True, I'll call on you.
different things
I'll
that
get you.
they're doing out there that I think we should ask the college about to see what they're offering. There's people coming up that are learning this stuff and might be very beneficial to us to help out.
Let's look at all the options, is what I'm saying.
Correct.
I think at the forefront right now is the grant writing. I think that's our biggest need. And even if you found somebody who had expertise in that space, you know, I think that could bring value
Yeah.
in its by itself.
My concern, and that's my concern with going with a company outside source that does it, because they might not know the specifics that we have down here. They might not know the details of our wastewater treatment plant, or anytime a new issue comes up that we have, in the like, for example, the specifics of the, what do they call it, the COPS grants, the different COPS grants like that? I don't think we've ever went through NCICG to do one of those. We've done those
Well, the
internally.
fire, yeah, Mike does a lot of them himself, but the fire department uses a firm out of, I believe, Texas, because they specialize in what is that grant, Tony, I forget what the acronym is. Yeah, no, not the SAFER, the one where the equipment grant. Sort of, yeah, ASON, I thought it had an acronym. Anyway, yeah, they use a special company. Do you mind if Drew,
If you wanna call them, that's fine.
Drew? Do you wanna come up to the, why don't you come up to the podium so people can hear what you're saying, if you don't mind?
Only 3 people in
It's
Well, yeah, but
everybody-
we're
It's
recording.
everybody
We're
online
recording.
watching too.
Come on,
Sorry, I didn't mean.
everybody wants to hear what you have to say.
How about we use our own in-house and talk to Gary down the street here? He might know somebody that's got these type of skills, and if not him, how about Mr. Vickery from Peru, who knows everybody in Illinois politics on both sides? And if anybody would probably know somebody, it would probably be even Mr. Vickery over Gary.
I think that has merit.
I have names of specific people, but I'm not putting them out just yet, because we haven't, we don't even, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Show me somebody that's got as unique connections as Mr. Vickery.
Okay.
Even ask the great Rod Thorson knows that when you want something, you go to Mr. Vickery.
So I am in agreement that I'd prefer to have somebody that we can try to get that has all these skill sets locally. The question is, will we find somebody, and will we find somebody for the price that they wanna come into Oglesby for?
Now, because this involves potential personnel? Is this gonna be something that's a closed session thing?
Doesn't have to be.
But it can be.
But can it be? I mean, before we start putting out people's names, I think it's probably good
Can
that
we
the
do
council.
closed sessions before you hire directly? I think you can,
Well, I
right?
think if you're talking about specific employee names at a specific rate of pay, yes, you can go into closed
Okay.
session.
Okay.
So we could find,
I think that would be the appropriate time, because if I was the person who was being considered, I don't know that I'd want my name just volleyballed around right now until we come up with something.
so are we good with that idea that we want to see if we can find somebody locally to have those skills as a possibility? Because if that's the case, we can work on drafting up the ordinance. We'll leave the rate thing blank. We can get a job description, try to find somebody, and if we do have somebody, we can talk about it in a closed session. And then if we negotiate a rate, then we can approve the contract and then they're hired. Does that sound like a plan we can go for first?
And you can even put that person's name in the contract, like it was for Becky recently, like it was
Right.
for Mike, so that you have a specific ordinance approving them as this employee at this rate. I think considering who you're gonna hire is really important to determine the rate.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with you.
Yes.
So I don't think you can put the cart before the horse.
Okay, all right. Is everybody good with that idea?
I think the path you laid out is probably the better way to go about
Right.
that.
All right, excellent. Next item. So I changed up the title of what it says on, it says, discuss, place on file, and possibly approve event coordinator ordinance. As I thought about it a little bit more, this was kind of my plan 6 months ago, that I really wanted to have a single event coordinator to run all the events in the city. However, after we had somebody that one of our event coordinators departed the city, I realized how much of a hole that set up. And then I talked to somebody in the clerk's office today that kind of reinforced that same thought process. For example, one of the personnel in the clerk's office has probably spent 5 or 10 hours working on these, the sponsorship letters that's had to go out and stuff like that. Because of that, and that was because basically we had a person leave that did that job and then the ball got dropped. So my concern is if I were to have a single event coordinator for the entire city, chances are that at some point in time that personnel will leave. And can you imagine how terrible that would be if the person that's run our Fun Fest solely and all these things for the last 2 years, they leave and then now we're scrambling to try to get that done? We saw that a little bit during our last administration, when we didn't have a clerk that all the commissioners pretty much had to run Fun Fest, and it was challenging. So what I thought about this is, so this is one we don't have right now. I took the economic developer contract and I used that as the same basis. So what I did was though, I changed up what it is. You see in the green areas there, it's basically services of an assistant event coordinator could be extremely helpful to the city with regard to event coordination as the burden of other full-time city employees interfere with their regular duties. My thought process was that we could get a part-time person that can help with some of the event coordination, because a lot of times our event coordinators that are already city employees are busy doing their city employee-based jobs. So I think it wouldn't put a burden on that, plus the cost would be significantly better. Any thoughts on any of that?
So since this falls directly under my area of oversight, I do have some thoughts on it, and I can probably give you an idea of what my position is on it. I mean, I do think it's a good idea, and I agree with you that you have to have somebody as an assistant, but I have a high level of confidence in the people that are underneath me, and I kind of want to take the approach, this is something that I had laid out for them when we met as a group, that you want to start developing people through leadership. And I think if I can do the right things, it definitely sets up the clerk to be successful. And if the clerk is doing the right things, it sets up the people underneath her to be successful. And that's kind of the model that I'm going to take with my department, is to try and develop people from the bottom up, not from the top down. So what I'm saying is I think Commissioner Baldridge brought up a pretty good point about, you have that option with people at the college, bringing in an intern or a part-time person to help with this. Somebody that's going to go in that field full-time as their career could be an option. I'm not saying this is the way that we need to go or that this is my steadfast position, but I'm saying this is something that we should talk about and think about, because then it sets a good example for the people in the department. It gives them the incentive to want to work their way up the ladder. So that's my 2 cents on it.
From your perspective of leadership and training and mentorship, I 100% agree. The part I don't agree with is that event coordination and the events that we have on, it relates to the clerk's office as far as, you know, financing and things like that, but the problem is it really is a side role. And I think, and I've seen it the last 4 years, cause a little bit of chaos in that office. Because there's so much work that has to get done, then people are out of the office working 12 hours for the next event that happens, and then things are behind on the bills and the different duties they have. So that's even though I do believe we probably have a little bit more capabilities and management skills maybe in that clerk's office now, and maybe, and hopefully definitely a lot more oversight. But the problem still persists, that you have a lot of hours and things that need to get done. And the clerks, obviously, and you've seen how busy they have to be trying to get as much stuff they done. I think it's an unfair burden to ask people to be putting in another 20 hours during the week, during their work days, to try to get event stuff, because I want to expand our events that we have as well in the city.
I'm 100% on board with more events in the city. I think most residents probably are okay with that. I just think that, right now, because of the way that the money exchange happens and that you do have stuff that runs through the clerk's office, I think I'd like to have the chance to see that come to fruition. And I do have confidence in my people that if we brought on another person part-time where it, you know, the clerk can have some oversight over it and basically develop this person, we could almost be advantageous with it where this person would want to stay. If they're doing a good job and they're getting the support that they need in their position, and now as they come out of their schooling and the formal part of it, you know, we could really embark on something where we're keeping somebody for a long period of time. Because I think then the decision would be for us, is this person doing a good job? And if the answer is an obvious yes, then it makes our decision a lot easier as far as, do we retain this person or do we try and bring in a different fit? So it's just kind of where I'm
Yeah.
at with it.
I understand that perspective, and, you know, I can't say that, even though I say it's been a little chaos the last 4 years, I can't say that we haven't had good events. They have gotten done, but I think the problem is it has been a detriment to the things in that office there. The other thing is, my thought process is, I'd actually prefer to have whoever's doing event coordination, whether it's employees from the clerk's office or whatever, I would prefer that to be run under the economic developer. Because even though the economic developer has all these different things to do when it comes to, you know, grants, grant finding, grant discovery, trying to bring in new business, trying to help us write new policies. But I think all the events that we do in the city play a small part in the economic development of the city. I know it did for me. Like, I fell in love with Oglesby because of Fun Fest. So to me, having Fun Fest better and better every year is something that helps with our economic development. Anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to weigh in on the whole thing?
My only thought on that, Jason, is, let's say we get somebody who's very experienced in that economic developer role, and we decide we're gonna pay him $42 an hour. I don't wanna pay somebody $42 an hour to manage events.
Correct.
I just think that's a waste of city money.
So I guess I should say that. I don't want the economic developer doing events.
But you want them to oversee
I
that
want them-
person, which is gonna make them do more work at that pay structure.
I think as far as helping develop which events that we have in the future, it's helpful. Like if we're gonna expand upon Fun Fest to something different, or come into something, maybe there's an event. I mean, we brought a lot of new, fresh ideas to Oglesby, which has been very beneficial. Like we've talked about the flags and the different things that we've done over the time that's come from ideas. An economic developer might come in with an idea because of an event that's happening 1,000 miles away from here, and they push that to the event coordinators that, hey, this is something
I'm
we
not
want to do.
opposed to that, but I think the way that you have it worded is they're having oversight over that person, and that has a lot more to it than
Well, my thoughts are
just
that,
coming up with events.
yeah, my thoughts that an economic developer would not be working down at the Fun Fest. That work would have been done maybe ahead of time or something like that. The actual event that they're working is not. That wasn't my intention. Any thoughts?
I think we should probably give it a little time here. I know that sucks to do sometimes, but I feel that we have, for lack of a better word, a more competent person in that office at this time. I feel she's encountered these situations before, and I would hope that she would still like to do that. I feel that it would be beneficial for our town to allow her, see what she can do for a little while, if she's willing to do that.
I know that we have a city clerk that is probably more talented we're very fortunate to have her, but I also don't want to burn her out on.
Well, I think that'll be for me to worry about. Respectfully, I say that respectfully. I'm not taking a shot or anything.
I understand.
What I am saying though is this tied in, her and I have weekly briefings because I wanna know what goes on in the clerk's office. I wanna know how I fit in, where I can be supportive. But along with that, I do have the confidence in her, and this is part of, my goals with her is that I have to evaluate the people underneath me, right? So this is one of the things that I'll be evaluating her on, is her ability to do it. The one thing I'll tell you from a leadership standpoint is I'm not gonna put somebody in a position to fail. If I didn't think that she was capable of doing this, I wouldn't even speak up or suggest anything about it. So that, just to provide a little more context as to what my approach is to it and why I feel she's capable.
And I have no doubt that the events would get done well. My concern is just what I've seen from the last 4 years and the time before. There's been so many, and I'm sure you're well aware of the massive amount of things that's been in disarray in that office. There's so much work that has to get done.
I think you got the right two people righting the ship right now. No
Well,
pun intended.
No, no, and you know what, and I wanna make sure people are empowered with that. So if you believe that and the rest of the council believes that, then who would I be to say to change that? Because again, remember what I've said before, I'm a big believer in incremental change, which is a long philosophy way of saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep. And I would even say, I would go a step further to say that if I feel like I'm not seeing the progress that we would expect to see as a council, that I wouldn't let it get to a point of outright failure, that I would say, okay, now we need to advocate going down this road and what you have in front of us here. So I'm not saying that this is out and it's a bad idea. I just think right now, let's use our resources, see what we can do. We got some time. I mean, we just took our seats here. And if we can get the progress that we want out of the people that we have here, and we're developing them the right way to get into leadership positions, we're doing the right things for the city.
So if you think you have all the help you need for Fun Fest already, I think we could I'd be confident putting a pin in this until, after Fun Fest and then see going forward. Because obviously, the ball's already rolling with Fun Fest. We had a great meeting about safety and security today and stuff like that. So things are moving. If everybody's on board with that idea, we can do that then.
Sure, I think that.
You know what, before
she
we,
would be
oh,
able-
sorry.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, it's your.
I'm sure if she was needing help, she'd let us know.
I hope so, because sometimes people have a lot of pride and don't want to tell when there's challenges that come.
Mayor,
She's above
Drew
that.
had a comment, so I don't know if you want to hear his.
Well, because of the format we're in tonight, if people want to continue to have comments, I don't think that's a problem. I do want to make sure that it's truncated, because I don't want to be here for 4 hours to get through the things that we want to get through, but that's fine. Drew, did you have a comment you'd like to say something about?
Yeah. The original Oglesby days started by, Mr. Frank Rockwell Senior. And what it was just a few kid rides and their food stand, and that's about it. And then, it got bigger with time. And when it did get bigger, under the famous Gary Carey, whoever he thinks, he was bringing in some really huge bands. The problem with that is, on the rainouts, they get off the bus, they get that nice big check, get back on the bus and leave. And even with this year's Fun Fest, we've got to use more local talent. I was noticing, I was looking at the band lineup, all the bands that play around here, I didn't see one of them listed for Fun Fest. Now, we could save a ton of money right there, just by hiring local bands, and you know what, people know what the local bands play. But I seen that path when Gary ran it, and like I said, it'd be a rain out, they'd get off the bus, get the check, and leave. We can't go back to those days.
I was going to make a comment that the bands that we have scheduled for this year were already scheduled last year, because it takes that far in advance. And that's why I think I made some comments at the last council meeting that we have already started making some strides in work to getting some entertainment and different options that we want to have at the next year, because it just takes that long to schedule the thing. Is there anything you have to add?
I would just add that Summer Fun Fest, at least for as long as I've been involved, when we brought it back after it had elapsed for, the thing that that we brand ourselves on and that sets us apart from any of these other festivals is the fact that we bring in regional bands. And if it rains, we have to pay whatever band we bring in. It's just part of the contract, and it's just the way it works, and it's just what happens. We've been,
Well, my standpoint is, I worked in a bar in California, worked in a bar in Florida, worked in bars around here. I've seen a lot of bands. I'm a pretty good judge of music, and I can tell you what, there are bands around here. Nancy Mac, Friday night they're gonna get shakers. Go over there and spend an hour and go listen to it.
exactly.
All right.
Drew, I
They're
think what they're
going
trying to
be-
say to you is that they didn't have the
Okay,
opportunity.
this is what, I mean, I do want open discussion and stuff like that, but I don't wanna have a constant back and forth on things like that. So, okay, so we talked about that. Next one, discuss subjects to include in a more complete nuisance ordinance and plan of action.
Can I steal this one, Jay?
You can say whatever you want, sure.
I didn't get,
Yes, yeah, that's just a draft. Well, it looks like it's gonna be on file for quite a while, because we're probably, we might not take that.
I think it's
So,
this, Terry.
what this one's about is, we have, there was some discussion on nuisance ordinance, actually, we had for quite a while in the city. And as I started doing more look, and I know Tony's been, kind of diving in this a little bit and stuff like that, it appears to me that, and this is where our attorney can tell me if I'm wrong or something like that. I think, at least in our ordinances, we have a lot of things to enforce already when it comes to, I forgot my other piece of paper. When it comes to burning, noise, barking dogs,
Junk
grass
cars.
cutting, what's that?
Junk cars.
Cars parked in grass, junk in people's lawns, buildings that are eyesores. We have a lot of things that can already do the enforcement of that. I'm under the impression that it isn't so much that our ordinances probably need to be updated. I think we need to have better procedures in place. Would you read that as correct?
I would read that correct, and I think you need a zoning enforcement officer, somebody who's gonna be in charge.
We have a zoning administrator.
Right, well, whatever you wanna call it.
Okay.
I've seen several different terms sprinkled throughout some of the different ordinances, but, I think that person needs to be in charge of listening to complaints, identifying the violation, and, sending out a letter first if that's the way you wanna handle it, and giving them a definite time date to have it fixed, and if it's not fixed, then start to write citations. The breakdown seems to have come in that whole process in the past, so.
What I thought I had heard, go ahead, sir.
I was just gonna ask if that should exist within the police department.
I think so.
I think
Largely,
it
the
should,
police department's the
yeah.
one that usually writes the citations there.
Okay.
Who's the zoning administrator, Jason?
Our city clerk is our zoning administrator that we appointed. So there,
Another job for you then.
so there's things in here that talk about that. They'll talk about the police does it, but then it talks about how the zoning administrator will be the person to actually write like the letter and stuff like that. I think the police are involved as they physically hand it to people is how I read some of these. But the part I was confused about is I thought we had a conversation, this was about 2 years ago, and my understanding was that we didn't have something in our ordinance that could actually take the violation to penalty, and penalty eventually goes to lien on property.
In an orderly progress.
Yeah. Do you think we have the process in place right now? Because if that's the case, then I think all these things that we have are just really about making a good procedure for it.
Yeah, so this is, just to provide context for the other commissioners and anybody else. This was like one of the top projects that I had going into accounts and finance because of the inspectors and how they fall in that area. So what we're looking at is, the enforcement part of it. I think, when we talk about the burn ordinance and everything else, it's the enforcement part. How do we do that? We had one recently where we had somebody violating a stop work order, and I had taken certain steps to show that on our part, there's been a letter sent out requesting a meeting, that going to fines or liens is ultimately the last place that the city wants to go with somebody. But if somebody is basically just kind of outright disregarding anything that the city is doing, well, then that leaves us in the predicament that's what we have to do. Setting up that process is what I'm in the process of doing right now. Our building inspector is a part-time position. It's something that doesn't really pay a whole lot, and it's something that, when you start to ask for the enforcement part of it, it almost puts somebody that isn't prepared for that in a precarious position, that they're gonna feel like they're playing the bad guy. And I think as long as we do everything in the right format, that you've given them a chance to come meet with you, to lay out a path forward as to when these things are gonna be remedied, or that they're gonna be fixed the right way, or we're gonna stop burning boxes, or whatever it is. On the city's end, when it goes in front of a judge to weigh on, you know, he can say, okay, the city did their part. They took their due diligence. They consulted legal first. They sent you a letter requesting a meeting, and you've done nothing in the process. They fined you for over a year, and you've paid zero of their fines. Now they're looking to put a lien on you. It's that process, and that's part of what I'm working through right now. I've only been in the seat for a couple weeks, so I can't say that, you know, we've totally made it to where we need to go. But the way that I envision this, after looking at the municipal code and the things that we have in there, is I have to sit down and I have to have this discussion with our building inspector and make sure that we're on the same page, that we're not gonna go give a hard time to the guy who has an existing wooden deck and he's replacing boards on it. But however, if we do have a commercial building downtown and he's doing things completely contrary to what he submitted in writing, and now there's a stop work order that's been issued, that we're gonna follow through on it. And the way that that path looks like is, you know, a permit log, a fee schedule, an updated nuisance and property maintenance ordinance, or something that combines it all into one place. The way that I see this is that in the clerk's office, we should have two things. A permit log, so we know exactly what permits are out and what the status of them is. The second thing is if somebody comes in and has questions, okay, well, here's the copy of the ordinance or the parts in the municipal code of where these things appear, whether it's a junk car, whether it's a fence, whether it's an addition onto a home. And then it's all centralized. So I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel with that, but I do think if we simplify it in that manner, it makes it easy for us, and it makes it easy for the resident that wants to do something, or the person who buys a commercial building that wants to try and open a business or have rentals.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I really do, I'm not kidding, I really do appreciate the work that you've started with this already. It's brought a lot of things to light, and hopefully we can do that. There are some areas that do talk about the building inspector, for example. The one I'm seeing here says zoning administrator all over it though, but I know there's other ones that talk about building inspector. If that is a concern, we could always make a modification to that way the enforcement comes from the clerk's office instead, if you think that's a conflict with the building inspector.
I don't know that it's a conflict, it's just that on your stuff, it says the zoning administrator, and then if I go into the municipal code where it addresses fences, I believe it's in the land development area.
It is.
It specifically says that the building inspector, if he sees something wrong with a fence or where there's a fence that's non-conforming, that he becomes the mechanism of enforcement. So all I'm saying is these are the kind of type things that we can work our way through and decide, okay, who's gonna be that mechanism? But at the same time, I'd just like to, you know, see that we're consistent with it, that we're tasking the same person. And if ultimately, if it's a building inspector, then it's the same thing as an events coordinator or an economic developer. For what we're gonna ask of this person, we wanna make sure that A, we have the right person, and B, that we're gonna offer them an appropriate pay for what we're asking them to do.
Yeah, so I didn't print off all of chapter 14, which is the land, I printed off section 13 of that, which talks about the violations penalty enforcement, and all of them talk about stop and cease and desist orders upon finding the existence of any violation of title. The zoning administrator will notify in writing the person of violation. And it goes on and on. It looks like it's all actions. So I'm curious if it's that the building inspector is supposed to be the one to identify it, but then the citation writing comes through the zoning and,
I believe I can clarify.
okay, sure.
So the building inspector would be the one to actually recognize it, cite it, and bring it to the attention of the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator, and this is where Pat, please correct me if I'm viewing this the wrong way. The zoning administrator is the person who would actually issue the fine or something along those lines.
I think the zoning, you can't fine them. The zoning administrator can issue a letter saying, get this fixed by this date. Then if that doesn't occur, the zoning administrator can follow up and ask the police department to write a citation to that person. And that citation would be filed in the court system. enforcement does are held every Friday at 1 o'clock for
Yeah.
all the municipalities in LaSalle County. And we often attend that call for traffic violations and curfew violations and other things that the city police department writes. And it would be brought up there, and then if they're found guilty, the judge would impose the fine at that point.
Yeah, the other way that this ties in with where we would need the PD's help, and I have to thank Commissioner Udis because he's been helpful in making that bridge or bridging that gap, is if you have somebody that's violating a stop work order, or if you have a contractor that's working on a suspended license in town, that's where the police kind of have to get involved, and they can say, you know, hey, right now your contractor's license is suspended and you're working right now, you have to stop what you're doing. And that's where you have that mechanism of, am I correct with that, Pat?
You are.
Okay.
Yeah, we might need to look at, because some of that stuff doesn't, like even under fines here, it talks about how the zoning administrator, but it does say will issue, order the issuance and enforcement of citations, recover fines and penalties for the violation of this title as authorized by state law and this title. I'm assuming that's where it gets into the part where you're talking about working with the police and
Yeah.
things like that. It doesn't necessarily
And I think
specify.
it's good to use your police department to play the heavy, to show up at that person's house, to even provide some more severity to the situation to them.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just getting a letter from the clerk that they can throw in the garbage and ignore.
Right.
So,
Okay, you gotta appear in court on this date, you know?
so the good news is, and I think Tony is taking a lot of actions going with, when it comes to all the building code stuff. The other part that people think about nuisance ordinance though is not necessarily in the building code. Like, for example, the burning of combustibles is in 8.52. The noise control is 8.64. The weeds and grass situation is 8.4. So I know you talked about, did we want to see if we can put all that kind of stuff under one thing? But it's not necessarily building code related things, but it's still the same enforcement method that we
I
need
think it
to
would
do.
be very difficult, Tony, to put them all under one thing. We're talking about a whole municipal code that runs the gamut of all kinds of things. And all of those sections, Jason, probably have the same enforcement provision, which is write a citation, drag them into court, and fine them if, in fact, they're not doing what they're supposed to do to comply with the ordinance.
One of the things that's been brought to my attention is, that I think it's still on the books, but I don't know if we've done it. There was talk about a traffic court that used to be done inside City Hall here. I don't know what the legality of all of that is. But we were talking about the option of, you know, if there's any problems with that system and we can make it legalized to where it's done here, because I wouldn't mind doing the other citations that we can control things in-house a little bit more. Is that, I don't know if you,
You have to set up a whole system, Jason, and you'd have to hire a hearing officer. There are some municipalities that do it, Princeton does it, for instance. But yes, you would have to write ordinances that would create those crimes, and then you could enforce them locally. And there are only certain ones you can do. I mean, even DUIs and things you would not.
No, that's criminal.
yeah.
But
So the city hasn't, I'll be honest, we haven't, and people have talked to me about this for quite some time, we have not done very well when it comes to enforcing abandoning cars in people's lawns. Grass growing, you know, we send a letter after it gets over the minimum time, and then it gets ignored, so we send another letter 2 weeks later, and then eventually after a month, it finally gets cut, and this seems to be like a repeat process. So I'd like to find ways that we can handle these kind of situations quicker. So do you think that we should look at the route of possibly doing something in-house like this, or should we just go the route
I
of the
think you
court?
ought to try to enforce the ordinance you should
Okay.
first. And I think that letter from Becky, as the zoning administrator, saying your grass is 6 inches tall, you have until this date to cut it. If it's not cut by that date, the police will be
Then
there to issue a
involve the
citation.
police, yeah.
I'm really taking notice around town of that happening, especially on our empty lots. And we need to do something because it just looks terrible. And I've actually reached out to a couple people who own those properties, and I've gotten nowhere.
So here's what I would envision, that I'd like to have the authority to be able to do this. Somebody hits that 8 inches that it says in the weed section, 8 inches, we send them a letter. Letter goes out. Letter says if they don't fix it within 7 days, we have a next action that we take on that. And I'd like that action to be that whether we cut it or we hire a company to cut it, because there is another section that talks about how, I think it says Parks and Rec.
So you can abate it.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
we can fix it, and then we take credit of all of our, you know, receipts and everything that it costs to do that like that, and I wanna send them a charge, that's gonna recover
Or
our
you can
costs.
put it on their next monthly bill.
I think that's a
Yeah,
great
we did.
We
idea.
do that already.
Well,
But we haven't done it.
it hasn't happened.
It hasn't been done consistently, but, because there's a little bit of a breakdown behind getting that information to the clerk to bill. But
Okay,
there are some properties that we do bill, for grass cutting. It's added to their utility bill and it gets paid.
okay.
What if it's an empty lot?
Well, we don't have that, but, I believe that
What do you mean we
bills
don't have?
should be sent out. We just have to locate the owner and create an account.
Yeah, I don't
for
think
them.
that'd be a hurdle.
So, the big thing is I wanna make sure that you think that we have the authority to do that. Cause if it's just about making good procedures that follow things along, I wanna do that. Same thing with, I don't even know if this is the place to talk about it, but, you know, for the last 4 years, they came here on the first meeting of May in 2019 and talked to the city council about planting, agriculture in residential lots. And our city attorney said, no, you cannot, you absolutely cannot do that. Cannot happen. And then they did it anyways. And I found out about the next year. And our previous council did not want to take action against that. And then, I'll say allegedly, 6 months ago, I found out allegedly that this residential area that's inside the city is not only still getting planted with soybeans, but they're actually crop dusting it. I haven't confirmed that yet, so I state that here allegedly. But if that's the case, I need to take action to stop this from happening.
Well, I think you need to take action either way, because if we're gonna have an ordinance on the books that we're not gonna enforce, then let's change the ordinance.
That's why we're having these conversations
Yeah, I
now.
mean, if we're gonna have them written down, then we need to enforce them. They're not in there just to overlook.
Okay.
That's my feeling anyway.
So, and the other ones besides that, the burning ordinance, it has been brought up over the last couple of years. We have stuff in here. I'm concerned about some of the wordings that we have. There's 6 categories basically that can stop it. I don't know if I give that, I think I sent an email to have, I don't know if I gave you that one right there. Number 2 says, when atmospheric conditions will readily dissipate contaminants. I find that to be very vague. Very
What did you
vague.
say again, Jason? I'm sorry, I was looking for the email.
When atmospheric conditions will readily dissipate contaminants.
Yeah.
Like that's an authorized time to use.
That's pretty vague.
That's
So-
vague. And number 6 is even more vague. The chief of police or police officer or the fire chief of the city may prohibit the otherwise permitted burning when atmospheric conditions or other conditions at the location of the burning constitute a hazard or public nuisance. I find that to be so vague to enforce.
That's very common, Jason. I see it in a lot of city ordinances, and it's about the dryness of the grass around the burning area.
Yeah.
That's something your fire chief could easily identify, you know, or the police department even. It's too dangerous, it's too
Okay.
windy. It's too windy for you to be lighting a bonfire 6 inches from your house, you know?
Yeah, or if there's,
I don't think that one's bad. I think the atmospheric conditions dispersing the contaminants gets a bit vague, but.
It has even more concern the fact that it says contaminants even, like, look, as long as it's dissipated, I actually think that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because then it's spread around town, because like if I'm downtown and I smell somebody burning leaves or grass, and it's a windy day, I can smell it through the entire downtown.
Well, you're talking to a guy here who comes out of the fire service, and I think it also poses a huge danger to, as well, when they're burning in unsafe conditions, or burning at all, and just not tending the fire. And I think we have way too many burn days on the books. I think it's too long, and I'm not opposed to somebody having a recreational fire of split dry wood every night of the week, as far as I'm concerned, sitting around having s'mores or whatever. That's not what I take issue with. It's the constant burning of rubbish and
Yeah.
leaves, and it does cause problems for everybody, especially people who have underlying respiratory conditions.
Well, I think, you know, it's tougher, especially when you're in you live in the downtown area, you're closer to everybody. So
That's what I mean.
your
Yeah.
thing that you do
You're affecting
affects,
everyone.
it affects a lot more people. I don't know the perfect answer for it. I mean, how do you take fire away from man? It's like our first invention,
Well,
you know?
I think you have a couple days a week that you can burn, and not, how are we structured now? I don't even know, I'm not educated. See, so you,
Got it. Thank you.
so Tuesday through Sunday, you can burn, is that correct?
Correct.
I
Well, then
think
there's also some rule in here about the time of year, and it has to be, well, daylight hours, and there's something in here about that too. I don't know what it is. But,
Time?
4:30,
Before 4:30?
yeah. So,
I still think that's too many days a week, and I think it's happening past 4:30
well, the good
PM
news
too.
is, I've never lived anywhere that's done more things to try to abate people needing to, I mean, the fact that for a month and a half out of the year, we suck up everybody's leaves. We do a branch chipping service twice a year, and anytime there's major storm damage. So there's a lot of things that we do to curtail the need for that. So I don't know, how much do we continue to do before it hits an acceptable level? I don't know.
I don't know, I think that you find common ground, and if you have Tuesday and Thursday as burn days until 4:30, I mean, that might encourage them to go the other route and bag their leaves or wait for the sweeper to come pick them up. I will tell you, I'm a little frustrated with the leaf pickup process or grass pickup process, because you put those bags out and number one, they don't pick them up, or number two, I see the garbage truck come by and throw them in the garbage truck. It's like, why am I recycling these things? if they're-
So I talked to the clerk's office about this today a little bit, to look at the contract from Republic, because I saw that as well. The fact that people buy for $1.50 and then get bags, you put the stuff in there, but if you watch them, they throw it
In the garbage truck.
I'm like, what is the purpose of this? So, looking at the contract, there was some issues with the contract. I just got made aware of this today. I don't think we've even had a chance to talk about it. They brought me the contract, and it doesn't even talk about that in there. Because I wanted to find out a little bit of what's going on. I heard the rumor is that they're short manpower and stuff like that. So that's a conversation that either me or Tony probably has to have with Republic to find out what's going on with that. I'm not opposed to finding a way to get more bag options to residents as well, to remove that. Because I think I've heard other nearby communities do a thing where they provide the tags for them as well and stuff. Is that, my point is, we already do a lot of things to try to curtail the burning process. I don't know how far we should go before we say, how much is enough burning? What is an acceptable level of burning in the city?
I'm rethinking what I'm saying. I think you have to have it probably like Tuesday, Thursday, then maybe Saturday, because so many people work during the day and don't get off until after 4:30. You have to give them an opportunity if that's what they want to do. I just think we need to limit it. I think there's too much. That's just my
You want to
opinion.
expand the burn days other than just Monday?
Well, I want
Or
to have
try the
more, I want to have
no
more
burn
outages.
More no burn days?
Correct. That's what I'm in favor of, but I don't know what the rest of the council thinks. so.
I do agree with the idea of splitting it up in the week, because if people were planning to burning their leaves whatever day, you just can't make them all the days, obviously, because then that's
Yeah.
the day that they're not available. So maybe that is something, so that way people have the ability that they know that they can air out their house or whatever.
Well, at least you know if you open up your windows on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, but are we gonna say no recreational fires?
No, I think you allow recreational fires any day of the week.
Any day
I
of the
think, or basically, I would maybe set a time of maybe not past 10, 11 o'clock or something like that.
Because I think right now, even recreational fires can't even be done on Monday. Is that correct? I have to look that up.
Burning events, some
I think
municipalities
Yeah.
just ban burning except in the fall. I mean, you can
Right.
burn the rest of the year. The real reason to burn is actually get rid of all the leaves that are falling off the trees.
Right.
Other than that, you get rid
And
of
we
the
have ways,
garbage.
to do that. We get 90% of them out by picking them up.
Yeah, I'm just offering that as a suggestion.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you're saying,
And
Pat.
a lot of people come to council meetings and complain about the health issues that are.
I agree.
And it's
And
justified.
that's why they've done this and said, okay, we're only gonna allow you to do it in the fall when it's a leaf problem.
Well, the beauty of it is, we're not approving anything here tonight. This is a discussion. So if that's something that we want to talk to people about and see maybe instead of just one day a week where there's a burn ban, maybe expanding it to 3 days in the week or something like that is a first step, and we can see how that is.
Well, not only that, we need to, if there's a certain time limit where they're not supposed to be burning, we need to enforce it like we talked about with the ordinance. If we go step, procedures go first step, second, third, fourth, and so on, we need to enforce it.
I agree, Mac, and that kind of falls on me, and I'll make sure that does
falls
get,
on all
that,
of us.
well, the police department is what I'm saying, is probably the one who's gonna be enforcing that or get the complaints, so.
And if this is something that we have to work on the text of what we already have, I think the attorney and I can put our heads together and get it right, because my experience with this is, it's so many cubic feet and cubic inches of material that can be burned at a given time. I mean, we can get as specific as you want, because that's really what it comes down to, is you don't want the guy that's got a bunch of leaves and he's got a bicycle tire underneath it, and it's fine for the first couple minutes, and then all of a sudden, it's just black smoke throughout the yard.
Or it's using
But the
another
other thing is the atmospheric thing that you were talking about. What I've seen in my experience with that in the past is, if you're burning in your yard and the wind is blowing, let's say, to the west, and the next door neighbor comes and knocks on the door and says, "Hey, Jason, I got, you're killing me over here." And you say, "Well, too bad, not my problem." They go and they call the cops. That's the cops' way of saying, well, right here it says in the ordinance that, atmospheric conditions, the wind's blowing directly at your neighbor. So I think between the attorney and I, we can get that part right, given the opportunity.
Some other things I've seen in the ordinances I've worked on is no garbage, just
That's already in there, though.
tree debris
Yeah,
and
and it
stuff.
should be
But that gets
enforced.
rid of the tire problem you were talking about, Jason. Can't burn anywhere near the city's streets because it just, ruins them, or sidewalks. Have to attend the fire constantly while it's burning.
Available water source, garden hose somewhere over
Those are
there.
things I routinely see in those ordinances.
Well, the good news is, remember what I said before this stuff, right? Any action that we decide to, this is all about trying to find ways that we can improve our community, right? So if this is something that improves it slightly, then it's an action we can do. But I just wanna make sure that we give the residents the opportunity. All of a sudden, there could be a big group of people saying, no, it's important to me that I burn every day, or something like that. I'd have a hard time believing that, but you never know, okay?
A lot of
So,
it depends on what
should we
you burn.
continue on then? Does anybody have anything else to add on that?
Nope.
All right. So the next item was if we needed to recommend any nuisance ordinance or plan to the plan commission. I don't think at this time, does anybody have anything that we need to recommend to the plan commission to take for action on any of these items?
Not on these items, but I'm gonna have some stuff to recommend to the plan commission, just so, as it falls into the code enforcement stuff, we have a path forward, and we have, we've done our due diligence with it, so.
Anything you have here that you might want to talk about it yet, or is it probably too premature
It's,
yet?
it's probably a little early, because
Okay.
I still have to get the structure and the process in the department where it has to be.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, next item. Discuss and possibly recommend park board involvement in dog park, softball field drainage, disc golf, Seneca Square, or other significant new park projects for prioritization. So this kind of goes on to the idea that we believe our park board probably was kind of excluded from a lot of little things that happened over the last how many years. Ultimately, it's our decision on how we want to go forward with anything here. But we have a considerable number of projects, the possible construction of a dog park. The softball field drainage is an ongoing problem for the women's course. The disc golf course, that a lot of pre-work's been done but not finalized yet. If there's any finalized things we're gonna do in Seneca Square or any other things, I don't know where we wanna prioritize that, but I think things like that would be a good idea to send to the park board. We have a long period of time to work with now. I don't know, there was also discussion that the park board used to have a pot of money to deal with in the past. I don't know if that's something that we wanna discuss appropriating for them, that they have so much money to help prioritize different new projects, or do we wanna keep that with ourselves? Does anybody have any thoughts on any of that?
I mean, I think the commissioner who has responsibility of that, I think we're inclined to listen to what his ideas are, and I think, before we throw a pot of money out there, unless that's something that he would want, which I'd be inclined to support if that's what he wanted, I think ultimately I'd like to see him have the final decision on stuff, because that's his area of oversight.
Rich, do you have a thought on any of that?
Well, I think, we caused a lot of problems with the dog park already. I think, we could have another meeting with them. I don't know what, yeah, I'm all right with having another meeting with the dog park thing. As far as the softball drainage, yeah, I don't know about that. I think we have a solution for it, but I really don't think it should take digging up the field and putting down drainage in it. I think there's a smaller solution. For the disc golf, a lot of this stuff was just dropped on us here. Yeah, we can have a meeting with the park board and figure out where they wanna go with this stuff. As far as Seneca Square, I don't even know what they would wanna talk about there.
Well, so So the reason the park board was kind of excluded from Seneca Square wasn't necessarily unintentional. There was a specific Seneca Square board for that, and then it got dissolved. So in my opinion, we probably should have went to the park board once that board got dissolved for it though, but neither here and there, that's water under the bridge, it didn't happen. My thought process that I'm kind of curious about is how much park board involvement do we want to have from their oversight and their recommendations, I guess is the question.
Park board discussions are always good, but I think the commissioner himself should handle the money. I mean, I wouldn't give the park board a certain amount.
Okay, do we want to talk about, we're going to be talking about appropriations probably at a regular meeting in about a month or so.
Becky and I talked about it after Monday night's meeting.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that real soon. You know, the other question is, if we don't want to necessarily give them a pot of money to work with, do we want to talk about appropriating so much money for new park? A lot of things that we do in the park right now, for example, is a big money cost, right? The pool operates at a loss every year. All the things that we do in the park department operate at a loss because it's something that we give back to the people. So the question is, how much should we be investing in new features in parks across the city each year? Because if you were to add up, you know, disc golf, you know, if we were gonna do a band stage or something at Seneca Square, or a complete drainage system for a softball field, or the dog park with all the bells and whistles, you add up all those items, it's a lot of money in a single year. That's what I'm saying, should we use the park board to help prioritize what we think the residents want the fastest and the soonest?
What, I
I'd
think
leave
we have
that
to have
to
some
the commissioner.
recommendations from
Yeah.
our supervisor to say, hey, this equipment here is no longer where it needs to be, it needs to be replaced, or we need to have kind of a capital plan for replacement of some of this equipment. That stuff's not cheap.
Well, I would think that, like, for example, we already operate at, what is it, 50 or 80,000, it's a big number for the pool, right? That's
I'm
just-
sure.
That's
Yeah,
just to
I'm sure.
maintain it. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking all the things that we spend on the park right now is for things to maintain. I'm talking about things that we don't currently have that we wanna add as new features. Is there so much money that we should be allotting to that?
What's our current appropriations for that?
I don't know offhand, but I don't know if there is anything set aside. Like, I know, for example, we didn't appropriate anything necessarily for Seneca Square specifically, right? But I know we appropriate money into the Parks Department and things like that. I don't know what that number is offhand.
Yeah.
So do we want to recommend anything to the park board for discussion, or do we want to just keep it at ourselves at the council level here? My thoughts
I
are,
think
recommend
that
it
goes
right
through
now, or
Rich.
We have to recommend something now, or what do you?
we could, it's on the agenda, we could, but we don't have to. But I'd rather get the park board involved sooner than later, but it's up to what you want to do.
Yeah, if they're willing to have a meeting with it, that would be great.
Thoughts?
There you go.
Do you want to
I'm
put
not-
together an agenda for them to discuss and things like that, or?
Sure.
Okay, well, that might be the only item that we actually vote on tonight. Want to make a motion to recommend items for prioritization to the park board?
I'll make a motion to recommend the items to the park board.
And I'll second that motion. Absolutely.
Hang on, guys. Baldridge,
Aye.
Udis.
Aye.
McDermott,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Kern.
Aye. Okay. Next one, discuss and possibly recommend increasing facade improvement program options for small businesses not already open for business. So I think I gave everybody a copy of, so everything in green is new. If it's in black and white, it's already in our current facade improvement program. There's really two things to talk about. I guess the second thing's the next agenda item. The first thing that I've always had concerns with the facade improvement program, if you look at what it's done in the city, it really has done some beautification efforts. There's several key businesses that have used it, and it looks great. My concern with the facade improvement program is I feel that it has been mostly used by businesses that are currently already open and operating, which is good. They operate better, they look better, it makes Oglesby more attractive. But the one thing that the facade program hasn't done, in my opinion, is attract new business to utilize empty buildings. I think it's been used once so far in the city, which is the Carrico's building where like the axe throwing and the resale shop and things like that. So that's why I was going to propose that if we continue the facade program, which is actually the next item to talk about on the agenda, but I would like to create a Group A and a Group B under eligible businesses. I added the words for Group A to simply say currently operating. Group B would be businesses that are currently not open or operating or less than 90 days that are located in a commercial, retail, or downtown district. The reason I say that is if you look at the first one, it's only for businesses that are in the tax increment financing district 1, right? So if you had businesses down like on West Walnut, like where the old Burger King was, or where Cindy's was, or something like that, they would not qualify for the facade agreement. It was only for areas in the TIF district on Columbia or on Walnut. So that's why I would love to expand that to another set of businesses. So basically, any of our commercial or retail downtown district. And if you look on the next couple pages, I changed it to where the big difference of Group B is that they can get a higher amount of money and a higher percentage of cost. My goal for that would be, it's another way to incentivize businesses to come into the city and occupy empty buildings. So this is, again, this is just a discussion point. This is not ready for any kind of approval or anything like that. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely going down the right path, because if we have somebody that's willing to invest into the city, you know, the more that we can do to help them out, the better it is for everybody
That might be
involved, so.
The difference between them coming here and going somewhere else.
That's kind of my thought. So even though the current facade program has been great, that it really beautifies it and stuff like that, the amount of money that the city gets out of that, I'll use the root beer stand, for example, because it's gorgeous. Does the city make any more taxing money on that necessarily? I don't wanna say it's zero, but it's a little bit, because maybe their property value went up a little bit, maybe they sell a little bit more ice cream, so we do get something on it, but it's not as important to me as a building that's completely empty and vacant, that I could get a new business operating. So to me, giving them an extra 25% of that split is significantly more worth it, in my opinion, then.
They're more likely to come in and stay here too.
Correct. Any thoughts on that? I just wanna know before, you know, if we wanna push this further, cause that way we can, you know, get it up more of in a process, more, finalized, we'll get it all legalese
And
and.
I have one thought, Ken may be able to help me here.
Sir,
Ken-
please, at all means.
Ken, is this,
My thought is, pardon?
I was wondering if this is in, the section of the code that we'd have to do a text amendment on, do you know? I think it probably is, isn't it? Which would
Oh, I
mean
thought-
you'd have to run any proposed changes past the plan.
Oh, I talked to-
Is the facade program is not part of the land development code?
Oh, it's a separate ordinance.
It's a
Yeah.
separate ordinance.
I talked to
I
Becky.
didn't know, Becky, that's why I was asking Ken, I thought you
Yeah.
know.
That's why I asked Becky about this ahead of time, because if it was, I wanted to put it under there as something that we could recommend to the plan commission, but my understanding is it's not. But if that but again, I'm not opposed to using our plan commission to come up with better numbers. I mean, these are numbers I just kind of came up with things I've seen in other cities. I wouldn't be opposed to putting a group of people together that's smart about this. Yes, sir.
So the only thing to keep in mind when you do that is make sure that they also have to be referred to the design review committee
Right.
in certain parts of town.
So I didn't change any of that language in there at all. But again, this is just a draft. All I did was copy both sections, and I just added a new eligibility. Yes, sir.
Relative to new businesses.
Correct.
There should be some kind of a commitment from that business to stay in business for a certain period of time.
I would say
Rather than just them fixing it up and then selling the building.
that is a great
That's a
thing to
great
add. I don't know if
idea.
that, is
That's
that
a
in the
great
current
point.
facade one?
I remember that we discussed
We had
it.
it for at least be 5 years,
So,
that if they,
Is it prorated, Ken, or is it pay all the money back if they don't stay for that 5 years? For example, I was just curious.
What we had in the past is they had a commitment to, this was not called the facade improvement, it was the tax incremental money that we put into that program. But I don't think there's anything in our current facade that says they have to stay in business.
I think it should be in there.
I think
My question is, what are your thoughts? Do you think we prorate this? For example, if they stay here for 3.5 years, do they have to pay us back the 35 grand? Or do we say, since you stayed for 3.5 years, we do the math and figure out exactly what they owe us back?
say it's 5 years at 20% a year.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I add something there? Please. Well, if somebody comes in and improves a building and is able to sell it to somebody, the improvements are still there, the value is still increased, and likely if they've sold it, the building's gonna be used instead of be vacant. So
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure that that's a great idea, and the other thing is that I know is that even when it was done many years ago when the TIF first started, it's very hard to enforce. I know that there were businesses that closed before it was either 5 or 7 years.
Yeah, I do think we have to have some language in there, because that's dangerous, because who wouldn't want, if you owned a business that was in poor condition, and you can get 75% of the funding to revamp your building, and then sell your building off, you essentially got free money. I think there does need to be something in there, and again, this wasn't in my draft at all, but there does need to be something in there. If a new building's gonna get for a specific business or something like that, and it gets approved by us, maybe they don't get the money until they're actually open and operating, or something like that. I mean, there has to be language in there like that already.
But if the building sells to someone they're not gonna probably buy it just to keep it empty. I mean, the goal's been accomplished. They've increased the value of the building, they've made it attractive to another business. What does it matter who actually has the business in that building?
Well,
I'll tell you, because what if a business doesn't come, and then now all it did was just increase the value of the building?
And not just that, we're giving the money to people who are professionally flipping buildings, and I don't wanna give them $35,000 up front.
It's only 15 to 25 tops.
Well, no, for a new
No.
business, for a new
Look
business
at
I'm
Group
talking
B.
about. For
Group
Group
B.
B.
Group B.
Group B
New
is $25,000 to
business.
$35,000. I don't wanna give somebody 35 grand as a contractor to just do the work to flip a
That's-
building, and we're just putting money in their pocket. That's just me, though.
Let me reiterate, that was the whole purpose of it, is because I don't think the first one was utilized by a lot of new businesses coming in for empty buildings. This change would incentivize empty buildings to get filled up with new operating businesses. But I do think with this, it's even more important to have some language that protects the city in there, because I don't think taxpayers wanna be giving, building owners basically more
Well,
equity
you're
in
gonna
their
be giving
building.
contractors money up front to do all the rentals and then turn around and sell it.
So, I mean, maybe we should be sending this to the plan commission to look at that, to make sure, because I mean, I just got the general idea, concept here
Yeah.
that I've gotten from other people. Maybe having the plan commission or somebody working with this would actually be something that really would, needs a harder look at.
The idea is a good one. The template that you've started with here is worthwhile, and I think if we send it to the planning commission, they can kind of digest it a little bit, come back with some recommendations, and then we can take it further from there.
Okay?
I can certainly get behind this, Jason. I think it's a great program to start.
So what do you think? Because I just had, it says possibly recommend. I do have possibly recommend, but it doesn't say on the agenda specifically recommend to the plan commission. Do you think that's close enough?
No, I think it's close enough.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we send this to the plan commission for further evaluation.
Second.
Baldridge,
Aye.
Udis.
Aye.
McDermott,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Kern.
Aye. Thank you, that was good discussion, I really appreciate that. All right, the next thing that talks about is, it relates to the facade improvement program. Right now, if we don't do this, this is the last year the facade program exists, right? Because at the end of this year is our TIF 1 funds get rolled into TIF 6, and there's no more expenditures of anything. We did a resolution last year that allows us to spend money on the facade improvement program, specifically from TIF 1 for this stuff, but after this year, it's over. So the concern is, if we want to do facade improvement programs, the program would have to change anyways, because we would have to get the money from something else. And that would be something that we'd have to talk about. Do we want to set aside $100,000 every year from our general fund for it? I mean, it has been utilized. It has made Oglesby more beautified, I think, in our downtown district specifically. People like that. It's a good thing, but I mean, this pot of money would have to come from something else, and that's something that we need to kind of talk about.
I think we need it. I think we have to do something. We're obviously not having people knocking on the door to come in here. I think we have to get some money and show them that we're interested in having them come here.
Can the number be variable from year to year, depending on what our economic needs are from time to time?
We certainly could. We've done 100,000. I don't think we've always appropriate, or put a resolution for 100,000 for it, but I don't think we've ever come close to that. I think I've seen 2 or 3 in the same year, because keep in mind, it used to max out at 30,000 and we'd give 15. I think I've seen like 3 or 4 at the same time. So maybe 45 to 50,000 is the most we've ever spent in a given specific year.
My thought, Jason, is that if we can spend $200,000 in a given year, that's excellent, because that means there's that many businesses coming in for us to invest in, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, but keep in mind, this is now coming from by changing it, it's not coming from the TIF fund. I mean, this was a perfect use for TIF funds.
I
it really
understand,
was.
Jason, but if you look, and it can be a individual, evaluation to say, hey, this is a business that's really gonna do good here, we'd be foolish to turn them away. And even if we're at our $100,000 mark, because we've got so many good businesses coming in, and we have another one that wants 35 grand, I would consider that personally.
As long as we can get, and that's what I'm curious about with the plan commission, if they can get good language that's gonna make sure that we're not just giving the money away, we're giving it to something that's gonna have some clawbacks to make sure that they're gonna stay.
I think we have a pretty good plan commission to look at all that
We
stuff.
probably
We've got
do.
some very knowledgeable people on that board, so.
Okay. I'm all for it. Again, this is just a discussion if we wanna do that, because that's the only drawback to doing any kind of improvements with the facade committee, is it doesn't come from TIF anymore, it's gonna be a drain on the general fund.
My thought process is whatever they decide, if you put at least, and then it would be up to council approval for anything beyond that.
Okay.
That gives you an out.
I think that's probably reasonable.
Okay. Well, the reason we'll have to talk about this is the plan commission might not, be completed with whatever they're gonna do ready for something to us to approve upon before we'll have to approve, appropriations budget, ordinance, I should say. So something to keep in mind that we might want to think about appropriating it for ahead of time before we even have a final program in place. Keep in mind, though, we already have an agreement for this year that people could still use that this year yet, for example, the facade
Okay.
stuff, but it's just not that, we don't have the second portion of it.
The Group B.
Correct. So we still have money this year that can be used for that, but, and keep in mind, the other areas would not be TIF one, even if we approve, let's say for Summer Miracle, we got this approved in the next 3 months, or something like that. It would open up other areas that would not necessarily be in TIF one. Like, let's say, for example, somebody wanted to acquire the Burger King because of the new one. That is not a TIF one thing to even use TIF one's fund. So if we did approve it this year, we would be using, general funds for it already this year.
Okay.
Something to think about. Okay.
We don't need another motion to send that portion to the plan commission.
No, that's just for us if we wanna set the money aside. That's on us. They could make a whole new program and we don't set any money aside, it doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
So, okay, the next one, I've included a couple, things for everybody there. They're kind of complicated. This is the city of Red Bud, Illinois. Red Bud, Illinois, they do a great job with public incentive programs that they already have them public of what they are. I don't know if we necessarily wanna use exactly one of the ones they have, cause they're kinda complicated. They have a tax abatement program, and then they have the application form, which is great. And keep in mind, this is a city that's roughly our size as well, that I used as a template. They even have, rebate for portion of retailers' occupation taxes, which it adds into more complex things. But the one I couldn't find an actual example, I have those there so you can see how detailed some of these go into and stuff for how they've done their expansion. What I'd like to do is the idea of a new public utility abatement program. And this wouldn't be necessarily so much for small businesses, this would be something that would entice much larger industries to come here. So let's say, for example, a facility that's coming in here we could have a standard that says if they're bringing in something that's 200+ jobs, and it's, 100,000 square feet, they get so much percentage of their utilities covered for the first year, and then so much, a smaller percentage the next year, or something like that. The goal is that we might be, now, our margin is only anywhere between 12 and 15% on our electric. It's a very small margin that we have. So by cutting them a massive deal on their electric, we might be losing money on that. But the idea is that we would get the long-term investment because the fact that we've increased the property value, we've got now 200 more good-paying jobs of a family or something like that. This is one of the ideas, in my opinion, the changes to the facade improvement program are a fantastic way to get small businesses in here, but we need something to incentivize large businesses to come. So I wanted to know if anybody had any thoughts on that or concerns, because I'd like to explore going into more detail about
I'd be
something like
willing
that.
to hear the numbers you're talking about.
Yeah, I didn't have time to put something together already. I had some ideas, but I didn't have time.
I think it's a
to
good
throw something.
idea. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's got merit.
Anybody have any questions or concerns about that? I mean, you're our two utility guys and stuff, so.
Would the company also be able to utilize a TIF on it, or?
So, a lot of our areas in TIF six are there. I'd like to do stuff, that could be a separate agreement, like, for example, you know, the one that we've been working with to see if they wanna come. If they were to come, we could, if they put so much money into their infrastructure, we could pay them back out of the TIF. We still have TIF six for the next, 19 years. But what about areas that develop in an area that's not in a TIF or something like that? To me, I like the idea of having more public, programs, so that way if people are looking at like 10 different municipalities or something like that, they're already looking at us because they know we have something public out there that they can get money in their pocket. Again, unfortunately, I don't have anything to show you right now. I just have the examples of Redbud, for example, of some of their more complex programs. I'd rather do something that's utility because in the city of Oglesby, we own our water, our sewer, and our electric. So it makes it something easy that we can control and guarantee to people.
I mean, I think anytime that you can create an incentive for big business, it's a good idea, as long as we have a way to offset that if there is a small
regulate it.
loss, let's say on the electrical side of it, the providing of electricity, that we're able to make it up somehow, whether it's sales tax because you're bringing in 200 jobs, and as long as there's a mechanism in place that we can verify that they're holding to those numbers. So as long as the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, I think in concept, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I kinda wanna go the same route with the facade thing, that we have to have some clawbacks in it to make sure that if we're gonna give somebody a great deal, that's gonna be thousands and thousands of dollars on their utility rates for the first year here, that we might even be taking a small loss on, we need to have some kind of guarantee that they're gonna be here for a longer period of time, because then, I don't mind us losing on it for the first year or two, but then after that, it's a constant benefit to the city.
Get some kind of a commitment from the company.
Okay. And I have seen stuff with, that's how it kinda attracted me to this Redbud idea, because I found out that they had new businesses that came, and they signed these long-term agreement deals, for how big their
Right.
size is and stuff like that, that they get their agreements paid out over maybe a period of 5 years or 10 years. So they don't get it all up front or something like that. But if you guys are interested in that, I can take more time to try to put something more finalized. I shouldn't say finalized. Actually put something together so you can put eyes on that, okay?
Sure.
All right. Next item, discuss and possibly approve formation of a formal event committee. I probably shouldn't have said the word approve because we don't have any kind of ordinance to do it. In the past, there was an event committee in the city. It was more of an ad hoc. What they would do is they would have the event coordinators up here, I think, with the mayor, and they would open it to the public that people could come in and discuss things. And my understanding is they got rid of that because they didn't like how the conversations were going. There was too much negativity and feedback. My opinion was that was a mistake to get rid of something like that. I think there's absolute value in having an event committee that represents all the different demographics we have across the city. When I'm talking older people, younger people, married people, people with kids, people without kids. We found out, for example, we did one of the events last year. It was a great event. The food truck thing with the car show. It was a great event for the first time, but there was a lot of mistakes that were made, right? And we upset some of our businesses downtown that it didn't work out so well for. And even though we did get that feedback, we did not have a formal way to get that feedback from residents. And I think if we had a formal event committee that represented different demographics across the city, and they met like 6 times a year, they could talk about the most recent event, what happened, what do we think about it, what was good, what was bad, what can we improve upon. The next event, what do we have for recommendations, what do we have for thoughts on that stuff. And then they can even have something from citizens being engaged to create new events and stuff like that. That's how we can find new ideas and improve upon ourselves. What do you guys think about something like that?
Not opposed, have a concern. I do think that there has to be representation from We Are Oglesby to give some feedback on this committee, because we can't be in direct competition with what each other are doing. We don't want to have the same movie night, you know, we don't want to show the
My
same
concern
film.
is, how many people do you think are gonna volunteer throughout the town? We're having a hard time now.
To be on the
doing
event
any-
committee?
Yeah,
I've got about 5 people that are interested in it already. that I've talked to, but I wanna make sure, I don't wanna just put those 5 people on, I wanna put it out. If we make this, I wanna put it out, and people can come in and stuff like that.
And the more the merrier. I'd be happy to have.
Yeah, I just don't want 2 different things being planned at the same time and end up in the pickle we were in before. I just think there has to be communication somehow.
We could even put one person from, to me, I don't think it's direct I don't look at it
I'm not
as
saying it's
direct
competition, Jason, what I'm saying is, if they're planning something that you're not aware of, and your committee's planning something, you have them both planning the exact same thing, now you're gonna have hurt feelings just like before, because both of them thought they
Maybe we,
took it up first.
maybe we make at least one member of the event committee somebody from We Are Oglesby.
If they would be open to that, I think that'd
If
be
they
a great
are.
idea, I think it should be one of their officers.
We can invite, yeah, I mean, this is just an idea and a
Yeah, and
discussion
I'm
right
just,
now.
that's
So-
my only thing that I see a possible problem with.
Yeah, my stance is, I have no problem with an advisory committee and a committee that's gonna generate ideas and everything else, but right now, if the events are being planned out of the clerk's office, I do not want this clerk's office hamstrung by a committee or creating another layer of bureaucracy. They have the capability of doing it the right way. If this is gonna be a mechanism that's gonna feed them ideas for them to act on, I'm okay with it. If it's something where they're gonna have to go through an event committee to just do something, then you'll have my opposition on that.
So I will tell you, that I think that general thought process is why it got disbanded in the first place, because they thought that there were, out of the 10 ideas that they offer, they thought 9 of them were terrible. My thought process about that is, if you get 10 suggestions about stuff from people, and 9 of them are terrible, you still have 1 that's good. And the 9 that are bad, it at least lets you know that there's a problem you have with whatever your event is going on. My thought process is, there needs to be a spot where residents can feel like they're more engaged. Because the general consensus I got from people was they didn't feel that there was a way to solve issues when things came up. I know, I found that with the food truck event, and there's a couple other minor events. I do think some of the problems are minor, and I do think that we're gonna continue to improve upon the problems that we recognized from that last event, we're gonna solve that. We're gonna make it going better going forward. But it makes residents upset when they don't think that there's a venue for it. So there is a level of bureaucracy it causes. However, I don't think it hamstrings you, because you don't have to necessarily, again, they're advisory, but it at least makes you aware of what's going on out there.
Well, as long as they're functioning in an advisory role and that all of the actual planning and everything else happens out of the clerk's office or the event coordinator or whoever we're gonna task with that, then I'm okay with that. But if it's that person has to go through a committee to do anything, then I'd be opposed to that, because we'd never get anything
Yeah,
done.
I-
You'd just be creating another layer of going through
It should be
motions
like
and
we do
going
the
through a
boards right
circle.
now.
No, if we can't utilize it to where it's beneficial, then it doesn't serve value, right? It's the same thing with the park board. If the park board doesn't wanna support the ideas of what the council has, and they're there to try to work out some fine details and make great recommendations to us, then they don't serve a purpose for us.
I think we're in agreement. I think we're saying the same thing, just in different ways.
Okay.
I would suggest the 5 people you have, we introduce them to the We Are Oglesby group and have them possibly work with them. I don't see,
You don't wanna do an
I
event
think
committee?
we're having a lot of committees here. I think we're getting off target of what we need to accomplish as a city. You have an event coordinator we're gonna bring in an economic developer, then we're gonna look for an event committee. I think we're getting too far,
Well, this is
It's
just
too
the
much
first.
stuff here.
I got bad news for you. I got about 40 more ideas that we can do over time. These are just what I think are the most important ones to get started for long-term development of things. I promise you, everything else is smaller stuff, smaller potatoes than these items here. Okay, what do you guys, the 2 on the ends, what's your thoughts on the event committee thing?
Well, I think I told you, my concern is that I think it has to be coordinated with We Are Oglesby to make sure that we're not in conflict. That's my biggest concern.
Well, my thought process is that event committee for the city would just be the city events, right?
Well, I get that, Jason, but who's to say that
They're
we think it's a city event and they're working on the same thing behind closed doors? We don't know what they're.
These are
they're
Oglesby
working on.
citizens too. They're trying to help out our town too, so I don't think that, it almost seems like you're gonna put an event committee against We Are Oglesby.
I don't know why, keep in mind, they're
That's what
not,
it
keep in mind, they're a
feels like.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
I want to keep that in mind. And what people don't know is there already was a conflict with some events that we're gonna try to work through. And I think having an event committee would have prevented those conflicts. I came up with the
Not
idea.
if they don't have representation, it won't.
Well, couldn't We Are Oglesby come?
I don't know what to
us?
tell you. My wife was on the committee and it didn't even happen. You know, there was never,
Well,
they
I-
never had a single committee meeting. You know, we came up with the idea 3 years ago to put movies in the park and then play the Sandlot at the baseball diamond, and it didn't happen. So,
I think both parties can do better with communication, but I think we're the ones that can lead that fight and get it where it needs to be.
do you think,
And I think we all need to just start over. This is a fresh council. We need to forget about what happened in the past. We need to start off fresh and move forward in the right way and work together instead of against each other.
so, maybe I'm describing something different. I don't see anything as working against each other. I believe in over-communication versus under-communication. I think the problems we've had in the past was under-communication. The last two issues I know between anything with the city and We Are Oglesby there was never any ill intent on anything, it was just under-communication. And I don't see how an event committee makes that problem worse. I think more discussions about events in the future and stuff gets more people talking about stuff, so that way their meetings are public, we have public meetings, so there's not somebody working on something that nobody knows about. But if the council doesn't feel that way, then that's what it is.
I feel there's a venue for them to voice their concerns, their ideas. I feel that it's already there. They could tell any of us, they could go to the We Are Oglesby meetings and help out that. I don't see the event committee, I just don't see.
I don't know why I keep hearing the We Are Oglesby, this is something completely different. I'm talking about the events that the city has, that the city does. Like
Jason, if
we
you're
do-
not hearing me, then you're not listening. What my concern is that if we're working on something, let's say we're working on a basketball competition, a 3-on-3 tournament, all right? And we're putting all this legwork in with our event committee, and they're putting it together. And unbeknownst to us, We Are Oglesby over there at their meetings is working on a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And we're both planning the same thing, putting all these man-hours in to make this happen. And now we both find out that both of us have been working on this project. That's what I'm concerned about. Because now you're gonna have hurt feelings, and
So let me
you're
ask,
looking at me like,
so let me.
Communication.
I understand that issue, so let me ask you a question. How does an event committee make that situation worse?
well, like I said, I don't think they make it worse. I think, like I said, you have to have representation from We Are Oglesby involved in that committee to make sure that we have our lines drawn, to make sure we know what the left hand knows what the right hand's doing.
My thought process for an event committee agenda would be three areas of topic. One, review of the past, most recent events that the city had. That's one. Second area, any plans or discussions or requests for volunteers or whatever it is for the upcoming meeting. And then the third category is, what kind of future meetings could the city possibly enter into for in the future as a discussion? Because right now we have, what is it, six, I think it's six, is it 6 standard items that we have every year?
I don't know, I've never counted them.
I want to say it's 6. There's 6 standard things that we have. And my goal is that we expand upon that. I really think that we need to have more events. I want to work with somebody like We Are Oglesby. I think it's a fantastic idea that the city puts on extremely large events like Fun Fest and things like that. Something that somebody like We Are Oglesby can't do, right? And they can have a lot more smaller type events. But I still want to have the city looking at how we can improve events and make ourselves better to have people come here.
I don't disagree with that at all, but I still think there needs to be communication.
I'm not saying anything against communication, is
Okay.
what I'm saying. But, so especially if we have our event coordinators or just people in the clerk's office, that means those ideas are generated from just there. By having an event committee, as I said, there's 3 categories, right? Past events, future events, and then they aid a discussion, because they represent the people. What do we think for something that we've seen somewhere else in the country that we think's a good idea? And then they can discuss it publicly. And then, so nothing's gonna be done in secret, is what I'm trying to say. I don't see how that hurts anything. Maybe I'm missing something. I got you. Well, these are some of the big ones to talk about, though. So, okay, well, it doesn't look like there is at least a unanimous decision about a event. I mean, I don't want to have to fight to get a majority just to get it in, because this is a new concept.
I think you gotta just lay out what the ground rules are, how they're gonna function, and once you have a description of what it is, then you can say, I would be willing to say I'm either opposed or for it.
I
But-
feel there's a whole new attitude, and there's a lot of roadblocks that have been, perhaps walked away, and they're not there any longer. I think we should take a little time, get off on the right foot now, and hopefully move forward, instead of, I've seen some of the roadblocks that were presented to both sides, and, I feel that it's all gonna change, it is gonna change.
Okay, I still feel that an event committee helps cut through some of those roadblocks. I don't see it as detrimental at all, because if it's detrimental, you don't use them.
Yeah, let's circle back to it.
Okay, we can do that. All right, number 14, this is the one I was thinking that we would do, but Becky, do all the commissioners have their code books yet?
I gave you mine back, I don't have mine back yet.
Yeah, Patty's been handling that, so I'm not
Okay.
sure, as people have come in, they've been offered to commissioners.
What we should do is we should probably skip this one then for today. My thought process is when we have these kind of meetings, that we could go through some of these things here, and as we look at them, literally just go through and say, is this one still valid? Is this one outdated? And then we could either
I think that's a great idea.
remove them, because I know there's an entire section about that big that goes over all the employee wages that hasn't been touched since like 2004.
It shouldn't be in there.
So it either shouldn't be in there, or what I recommend, once we get to that section, we can put a little line in the beginning of it that says superseded while the city's under union contract.
Or see the collective bargaining agreement for,
It's a monumental task to review all of their ordinances.
General housekeeping, yeah.
Yeah, so my suggestion might be that you focus on a specific chapter. Let's start with
Correct.
chapter 1, chapter 6, whichever ones you want to do. Let's look at that one, have everybody look at it, make recommendations, make decisions about what's gonna change in that chapter, move on to the next one. It's gonna take a long time.
How about we do that, so we're not reading them at a live meeting or something like that? What we can do is after everybody gets their books, everybody that has an issue with them, they can earmark something in chapter 1, and then we can go to that section. Okay, which ones did somebody have an issue with in chapter 1? And then we could look at that and then see what we want to update.
or do we have the commissioners with their respective departments kind of look over their section that pertains to them, and then come to the council with recommendations with what we want within our own departments?
The vast majority that need to be updated, or something, like, for example,
Apply to everybody too.
Okay.
who would adult use ordinance apply to? You know what I mean? Like, that needs to be updated.
Yeah, I know.
The wages thing, the death certificate thing in there for stuff that hasn't been done since like 1930 or something like that. So, but
Okay.
we can circle back to that. All right, the next one is, Rich and I had a discussion. It's not on the current agenda. This is something I added. It's just a discussion. Discuss safe route to schools grant and possible modifications. So, Rich, did you want to talk about this, or?
May I?
Oh, I'm sorry, I
may talk
apologize.
about
Mac,
that?
I apologize. Yes, we talked.
It's all right. In the past, we've had safe route to school grant possible, okay? But I went to a meeting the other day, and they're talking about the grants, all right? We can rescind our proposal from before and put in modifications. You know, cause a lot of times you have bins, as long as it's been, the prices, it's increased, and, I like the idea of rescinding and then resubmit the application.
So what Mac's talking about, when we put in for the Safe Route for School grant, right? They pay us up to $250,000 that they're gonna get. We have to pay, I think, 50,000 of it. Is that correct? 20%. Yeah, it's like 50 to 250,000. So for us, the goal was that we would get, for $50,000 of cost in the city, we would get $300,000 worth of sidewalk there. So we engineered out and estimated what it would be for $300,000, and we got the grant. That's the good news. The problem with this grant is it's an all or nothing thing. So, for example, if the costs have gone up for so much time or whatever it is, let's say it goes to 400,000. They only pay us the 250.
Right.
We have to come out of the
That's
pocket
correct.
for the rest if
The
we
rest
still
don't
want
even-
the grant. So the concern is that so much time has elapsed in this process, because they're on some kind of environmental study right now, we don't know what that cost is gonna go up to. For what we thought was gonna be 300,000, it might be $500,000 at this point. So the concern is, do we feel what we initially was getting $300,000, costing us 250,000, is it worth it at this point? That's the question that we need to kinda ask ourselves.
They did make a comment that, if you rescind before and you reapply, it doesn't mean you won't get it, it doesn't mean there's no point system for or against it. Is that right, Jim? Or- Sorry, sir, I don't mean to put you on the
There's some
spot.
sort of scoring system that they use, but we got it once before, so I probably wouldn't do it again, just the dollars available in the state's budget.
So the
Right
question,
now, they've been doing the cultural review for 8 months.
Right.
yeah. So the
So is it site specific, Jim? Is that what the problem is with the cost going up? We've said it's these thin blocks or whatever, and, okay, so it's site specific?
It's like, we tell them it's going from here to here, it's going to here,
And that's what you have to do.
that's what you have to do.
And then with the cost of everything increasing,
I
we
get
would
it.
end up having to pay X amount more than previously if we were
Mhm.
able to do it.
So from what we thought, and then, so the concern is, if we thought we were gonna be spending $50,000 to get $300,000 worth of, we might be spending $250,000 to get what we initially thought was $250,000 worth of.
Well, then that's not,
Then it doesn't become as valuable to
that's
us.
not responsible on our part either.
So then the question is, do we wait until it eventually goes through and see what the final bids are? Or do we rescind and resubmit with a lower scope?
And if we do rescind and put it, resubmit, we gotta realize that there's other communities doing the same thing. And we
so-
gotta get going on
So
that.
the advantage of getting this grant was it gave us an opportunity to solve a lot of the issues we had in the city to where sidewalks were not put in, and we don't have a means to enforce them to put them in. So, Jim, do you know when the next action item is? Are we waiting on basically until that cultural study gets done and then it would go out for bid?
Right, then we go into plan review, which would go pretty quick. I'm looking at, trying to find right now what the next cycle is. I think it's on a 2-year cycle.
Didn't they say,
Selected last year. So
We applied it was more than a year since we applied, I think.
right, that's what I'm saying, we might go come up with a different cycle to apply, but whether we would get the bid before that cycle. And I guess I wouldn't rescind it just yet.
Okay.
And bid it, find out what it is, and that does 2 things for us. We don't have to accept it, but we can see that, oh, this is gonna cost us $450,000 instead of $250,000.
Mhm.
Then we tell them, you know what, we send our request, and we submit another project of the reduced scope of work that is closer to $250,000.
My only concern about that is that put us on some kind of banned list like it did with Seneca Square, that we're for 2 years that we can't get a grant?
Sound like it.
Okay, because if that's the case, if it doesn't hurt us, then yeah, we might as well wait until, see what the total cost, maybe we'll be wrong, maybe we'll come back at 310, and we're like, oh, okay, great. I doubt it.
So we can, Mac and I can give John Paris a call and ask something like that.
Okay,
And find out. I think when John was talking about that at this meeting we were at, he was more specifically talking about the ITEP funds, which are shared use paths and pedestrian paths and stuff like that. So it's a different program, so we can find that.
okay, all right, appreciate that. Okay, we'll go from there, get some more information. All right, next item, discuss adding a separate Facebook account for just posting video meetings of all other public meetings in City Hall besides regular council meetings. So my thought process for this was, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that don't think we're transparent enough, like they don't know what's happening with some of the other meetings that we have, whether it's a park board meeting or, I shouldn't use park board because that one was televised, but some of the other ones that we have, some of the various committees that we have that meet in the city. Don't get me wrong, I still want to have an event committee, but that'd be a big one. But what do we think about doing video things for not only our working meetings, but any other meetings that we have, whether they're the police and fire or stuff like that, and we put them on a separate account so it doesn't clutter up the city's main Facebook page. So that way, we're still being transparent as we can.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah. I have no idea, but who actually runs our Facebook page or our social media? This is all new to me, so that's why I asked.
So, actually, that's something we should talk about in the next one when it comes to the comp plan. Right now.
I know you've done the postings for the electrical stuff in the past when there's been storms and outages, so that's,
So that's something I want to talk about with the comm plan. So right now, and nobody else wanted access in the past besides me. So that's a question, so that's a question as well. You know, who wants to have access to the Facebook page? Right now, it's the clerk's office and me. I don't even have administrator access, I just have posting access rights is all I have, which I think is an elected official, that's all you probably should have, so you don't mess
Have
anything
admin
up.
access?
What?
Do you have admin access to
I
it?
do, I just recently got
Yep.
it.
Okay.
In the
Yep.
last term I was the administrator.
She's the one that gave it to
And
me,
did-
actually.
Yeah, did most of the posting.
Okay.
So, when it comes to Facebook, I don't know if any other commissioners wanna have access to that to be able to post, cause the reason this came up is because utilities is now split between two commissioners, and there has been times in the past when something happens on a weekend, that again, it's how you guys wanna run your departments, but I thought there was value in having access to be able to, update people whenever there was an outage or something like that. Is that something you would be interested that you would want?
Yeah, I'd be interested in that, but there still would have to be some kind of discretion as to what gets posted, you know?
So, that's what the communications hazard and outages plan is, which is the next item to talk about. But as far as Facebook goes, what I'm wondering is, right now, our Facebook gets kinda cluttered up with a lot of stuff on there from different events, which are all good things, and the only videos that are on there are our primary council meetings. I like the idea that our primary council meetings are there, people give a lot of feedback on that, they get a chance to look at them, digest them the next day, all kinds of good things. The problem is if we start adding things like police and fire board, design and review board, facade committee, plan commission, all these things on there, we're gonna clutter up all the videos on there. I think it would be a good idea to make it completely separate Facebook accounts, just for City of Oglesby's.
You can
Commissions, committees.
add things to our page already. We don't need to have an actual separate Facebook account. You can, I'm not that savvy with it, but I know there are ways to put just a little thing on there and you touch it.
A subsection, to where the videos are only in another subsection.
You can put on there like, different videos or whatever it's
For some
called.
reason, you just don't wanna post them on the city's website, as opposed to a Facebook page, I'm not a Facebook.
So I
What
think.
about a YouTube channel?
So I think there was some kind of issue, and Andrew only talked
Yep.
about this a little bit, but the one thing that's nice about Facebook is we don't have to archive anything. If we start doing other things where you're actually making,
I think that might well change.
it's probably, you're thinking that will change over time?
Yeah.
Yes, you
'Cause it's
already
your
do have
Facebook
to.
page.
We legally do not have to archive any of our video meetings. Only the min-
no.
That's what I'm saying. But the concern was, by going another method that wasn't a broadcast method, that we might have to someday archive that, and it'd be one thing that, because then now we have digital media we have to hold.
So your suggestion is it's a live broadcast
Correct.
only, nothing stored?
It's only on Facebook, so Facebook, whatever Facebook keeps, if Facebook goes down, if Facebook loses all of our video meetings and stuff like that, the city has no obligation to do anything with it.
I'd like to check on that.
Okay.
I'm inclined to go with the attorney on this.
All right. Do you wanna hold off until we get more legal information on that
Well,
then?
you're not gonna take any action on this tonight, but
No.
you can get the council's feeling for whether they want a Facebook page or put it on the website or whatever, but I think it's good to be transparent, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but
My,
you
my,
just gotta do it right.
my goal was that this would be the last working meeting that goes on our city's main Facebook page, right? Because this is a very, you can tell, this is a very different meeting that we've had tonight, right? It's very informal, it's very communicative, it's good, but I didn't want it to clutter up with our formal meetings that we have, is my thought process on that. But that's why I kinda wanna hear what everybody else thinks on that. If not, we can hold off on that and don't have to.
I want to be transparent. I want to broadcast them, whether it's on our existing Facebook account or whether we create another one or somehow version 2, like Rich was saying, where you click on a certain link on it. I think we should have them.
I absolutely agree, because there's so many people that have come, that I've talked with, that they said, I didn't even know that that was something you guys did. I didn't know they met on that. I didn't know that was a thing. And I'd be like, yeah, the plan commission met on
I
that.
think it shows the public that there's a lot more that goes into the city government than just these meetings.
Correct, but my concern was I didn't wanna clutter up with, you know, like, if somebody's trying to look for the main meeting here that we have a couple thousand views for or something like that, that somebody's like, well, I can't find it, I got a plan commission, I got a fire and review board, I got this, I got that. That's why I thought putting all those on a separate one would be a good idea.
City of Oglesby,
Committee,
you know,
advisory boards.
advisory board
Yeah,
coverage or whatever.
something like that. I don't know how difficult it is to have that computer have 2 Facebook accounts over there, Becky, if that'd be possible. That way you just click over to which one posted it.
You
Probably
can just
shouldn't be
switch
an issue.
accounts.
Yeah, it's not hard to
It's
do.
not that hard.
Well, we don't have to activate anything yet. Why don't we can create it and then and see if that's something we wanna do in the future then, and I guess our attorney can tell us if there's any legal concerns. I hope you don't find anything that says we have to start archiving, video recordings anymore at some point, so let's
And
not find that.
We've had conversation about, you know, who posts on the page,
Mhm.
and I think it's probably more relevant to the commissioners that oversee utilities as far as posting and that kind of thing. As far as it concerns me, I don't have to be the one to post,
Mhm.
especially if it's something for my department per se. If public affairs falls under the mayor's title, I don't care if you post. For me, it's not, there's no problem one way or the other. If the information is concise and it's accurate and it's 100% on target, then we're good with it.
Well, this leads into the next
That it
thing.
needs to be.
Well, however, Jason, let me back up there. I would like to have access, because I think there are stuff within my departments where it is important that I get that out to the public right away.
Well, so let's lead into the next one here, which is discuss updates and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see this yet. I know we had binders to all the other commissioners. This is our communications hazards and outages plan. This essentially got created after we had the derecho. What we found out was we had an emergency disaster plan for the city, but we didn't have anything of how we communicate and communicate information outside of meetings, basically. So this basically is a rough guidelines of stuff like that. It does talk about what Code Red needs to stand for, and that's one of the things I was gonna recommend we change. For the last 2 years, we have been sending Code Red stuff for electrical, even though it's not on there, and people wanted more Code Reds for stuff like that. That's one of the things I wanna discuss here, like what do we send Code Reds out for? Right now, what's authorized is technically boil orders and water outages. Electrical is not on there as one of the items, it's on the second page. I think it'd be a good idea to add that. If you continue going on, you'll see where it says certain people what authorities they have to communicate. A lot of the Code Red stuff, that's why I said with Terry, as Health and Safety Commissioner, you have a lot of stuff when it comes to Code Red, when it comes to emergencies and things like that.
And I am
Like,
a user on that, and I am trained, so I would like to be
You wanna be a user?
I
Well,
would
that-
like to, I think it would have value.
So that's something we should talk about. One of the things that we talked about in the last one was that here's the people that are authorized to release information. Elected officials, appointed officials, the city clerk for anything, chief of police and fire chief for safety only, and then specific employees. And the only person that has access right now is the Parks and Recreation supervisor. That's who's authorized to release via the medium. The trained people who actually send the message is clerk's office, police department, and fire department. And then we have the Parks and Rec can send stuff too. If that's something you wanna do we wanna add elected officials to having authorization to send out Code Reds?
Well, here's my thing, Jason. So if I have a major incident, let's say we have a major downtown fire, there's no way my police chief or my fire chief is gonna have time to send a Code Red. So in those situations, when I'm talking to them and I'm kind of the one they're reporting to with progress updates, I'd be in a perfect position to go ahead and update as far as what's going on with that incident. So that's where I think it brings value.
There is something else that needs to be added. I don't think I shared the access with you. Dom and I had access as IVRD board members. I think our police chief and fire chief does too. There's a number that we're authorized that we can call in that'll broadcast our tower. They'll get a range of every cell phone in the tower. We've never used it. I've never called the number to see I've never had an emergency that big, but now that you're on IVRD, you'll have access to that too to give you. We should probably add that as one of the items of mediums to communicate with that's not on here.
Okay.
But I can see what you're saying. If you wanna have access to that, we can update that and do that. Does anybody have any concerns about that? Is this the first time you guys have seen this document, probably? Yep. Yeah. Well, we don't have to make the changes today. If you wanna look through them and see what other kind of modifications you wanna make. And what you were saying, in the back page, there is examples of standardized messages that I've utilized for, like, if we have a water outage, electrical outage, boil orders and stuff like that. They're general formats, so that way, when the city, because usually what happens if something happens during the day, it's the city clerk's office that'll put something out there, and they'll use these generalized formats that we have here. So, the only last thing I was gonna talk about this, and Terry and I talked about this, Code Red. Code Red, there has been some people that said they haven't gotten their Code Reds and stuff like that. Terry and I talked about, because I think it's the first Tuesday of every month that they do the siren test. We thought about maybe authorizing a Code Red test for the city. So everybody in the city will know that they get a Code Red test, and that way if you don't get it, you know you're not signed up.
Yeah, and people gotta realize that this isn't something that we can enroll you in. You have to go online and actually create your own account. And you only need one per household, and you can add in several different email addresses and phone numbers for each member in your household. And that's the only way to get the alerts.
So do we want to do this for the next, so we will have one more time to talk about it the night before, because I think Monday and then Tuesday will be the day of the test. Do you want to talk about it now, if that's something we want to authorize, and then we can mention it one more time?
I think it's a great idea to send out the test. That way people know whether they're signed up and whether it's operating correctly.
I think talking about it now and then reminding them again at the official council meeting to know that it's coming on 10 a.m. on Tuesday or whenever we send the test would be a good idea. The last thing is, Terry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I made a mention of this a couple years ago, and I don't think anybody interested. We have our siren has a special feature, and it's never been tested as far as I know. Would you be interested in somebody testing that? Apparently it has an audio feature that you can say something across the town.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to I've always,
Like the
we don't know if
bigger
it
fire alarm
works.
systems in the buildings where you can grab
Didn't we
the
use it for
radio
New Year's
and
Eve?
broadcast.
I don't believe so. I thought they had a different speaker system set up for that. I don't think it was used on the siren. Do you know if it was? I don't think it was.
I don't know.
I thought they used a separate speaker. I was out of town for New Year's Eve, so I didn't know.
I don't know whether they did or not. But I mean, as long as you do it on a test day at
I
the same
think-
time,
I think it'd be interesting to try, just so we know if it
Yeah,
even,
try
if
it
it even
out.
features. Well, it's your department.
you go, I defer it to you. You go ahead.
Defer
I
it to
won't be
me?
around probably
Yeah, okay, all right,
at that time.
all right. Does anybody have anything else they wanna talk about the comp plan or the hazard? If you guys wanna review it, we can always make some changes and update it. You know, Terry wants to put that one other in there. If anybody has anything else, we can do that. Okay. Old business. I don't think we have anything specific. This is our first working meeting. All right, public comments on any topic.
Yeah, I do. Go ahead. I wanna.
You wanna come up? People can't hear you.
I wanna apologize for my ignorance as to what this meeting was gonna be.
There's
about.
no-
I had no idea.
Sir, there's no
It's
apology
certainly
necessary.
Not what I expected, but I like it. And I'll be able to tell you, I'm sorry, it's more informative, more educational than any council meeting.
I will tell you that nobody can hear you at home if you don't come up here.
So I hope you guys do this again.
Oh, we are.
Because it is, I think it's really good. So like I say, I apologize for my ignorance. I thought, Terry told me it was gonna bring donuts, so I think it's gonna be really good.
I was gonna ask if anybody wanted to order a pizza at this point.
Well, I think the timing wasn't too bad. My goal was if we are under an hour, we're probably not serving the community right. If we're over two, we're probably getting a long-winded. So we're pretty close to the end. Any other public comments?
You gotta be from Terry's Bakery, though. Those are the best damn donuts.
I like Steve's Bakery over in
Oh,
Ottawa.
Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Steve.
It is public comment on any topic, I guess, so.
What I'm coming to talk about right now is, what I called you about the other day. And, you know what? Have you ever been out on a job and set up a rotary? Have you?
First of all, it's public comment, not Q&A, but I don't, because of tonight's format, I'll answer you. Have I worked on the street before?
No.
That was not my,
No. Have you been on a street job or a road job and set it up in the morning? Because.
no, I've not been on,
Now, what
I've
I
never been
did-
on a street or
what I
road
did
job.
The other day was, down here by the police station, they've got the boring holes, and this is the street facing this way, and the guy is down up to his knees, and he's down like this. You never allow yourself to be ruled by the traffic. These guys are not using any safety. They got the boring machine across the street, and they got the guy on the other side of the street up to his knees. Now, do you know who John Crozer is? Because if you drive from Ottawa to Streeter, that's the John Crozer Memorial. He got run over by a drunk driver. You never trust the public anyway. When you're out there, you never do it. We wouldn't start in the morning until all of our signs were set up and the flaggers were out. Rich is a laborer, he knows. And I'll tell you what, we can't keep
allowing these unsafe companies to come in this town and work like this. None of these guys are flagging. They're just taking it upon themselves to, keep their people safe. And so far, they've been lucky. But all it's gonna take is one older, somebody gets excited, boom, hits the gas, and that guy would have been smoked.
Drew,
And
I
then
think,
what would you have done?
Drew, I think Mac and I could probably look into this and make sure that the correct,
Oh, no, this has
safety
been going on
precautions.
for a while.
Well, I understand, but this is the first I've heard of it, so I really haven't had an opportunity to address it.
I've only had my union card since '77. And when I call up, I like, he says, did you get to, no, I'm not doing chain of commands, because I seen something dangerous, and I don't wanna see another person killed.
Mr. Merriman, I can tell,
John Crozer is not alive because he was hit by a drunk driver. You never trust anybody when you're out on the pavement.
I agree.
And that's one of the things they tell us during flagging school. You never put your back to it, you never get vehicles involved, and they got their boring machine on one side, so they're making the area for people to go east and west very dangerous.
I understand, Drew. Well,
You know, I don't wanna wait till somebody does die, and then we go, damn.
I don't think
we
anybody's
should've
saying-
did- We should've did something.
I don't think anybody's saying that. I'm saying I hear you, and I think it falls between, kind of, in between
But
Mac and I.
I think a big thing, Terry, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh.
Whenever somebody challenges him, he takes offense to it. What did you say to me? What did you say?
Can we
Tell
not
what
do,
you said.
can we not do this, Drew?
No, tell him what you said to me.
We're not gonna do
You
this.
said it was the dumbest effing thing you heard. That's what you told me
I don't even know
on
what
the
you're
phone.
talking about.
That's what you told me on the phone.
I don't even know what I'm,
When you called me, that's what you said on the phone. And not only that, you said something like that to, Mrs. Fredericks too.
we're gonna start this,
No, we're not.
3 weeks in.
I'm just
Okay.
telling-
All right.
when somebody
Any
knows
any
how
other
to
public
take
comments?
solutions,
Is there any other public
you
comments?
should take care of it.
Thank you. Okay. So we don't necessarily have commissioner reports or mayor reports, but I did put a section in here for if there's any final comments anyone wants to talk about. We'll,
No, I mean, I think the meeting like this is worthwhile, and if we can continue to get stuff accomplished, I do like the idea of keeping the formal council meeting a little bit shorter, so we're making the approvals and going through the motions and doing the actions. And, you know, I appreciate that we're able to get something accomplished, or at least open up some communication.
Absolutely.
I really don't have a whole bunch to add, Jason. I thought it was a good meeting. I like this format. I think it gives us more room for discussion on all these items. Couple things that I'll be bringing up here sometime in the future is the future of our ambulance service, which I've kind of alluded to. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that come 2 years, we're losing our fire chief, who covers a lot of ambulance time, and also our director. And we're probably gonna have to restructure that department. I just want everybody here to be aware of that and realize that it could be a hard thing to solve. So I'm working very hard on that. Tony's helping me out. We're in the background trying to find out solutions. Problem is, just so you're aware, pretty much any solution is gonna cost additional money. And right now, that department is in the black, based on the income they generate, but I think we might have to change that model. Or, worst case scenario is possibly go out for a referendum for a ambulance tax levy in order to keep our ambulance staffed after this 2 years is up, because there's no way we're gonna be able to continue what we have going now when we lose Kathy. She doesn't go on vacation, she works 80 hours a week, and nobody else is gonna do that. So just wanna be transparent and make sure everybody's aware.
it's good to know now and look at.
Yeah, we're
look at
working on it.
options now.
I just want people to know that we are working on it, we're taking it seriously, and we're trying to come up with some models that will solve the problem.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Well, I think this format, these meetings like this is good, gives an open discussion, we can hash things back and forth. A lot of things were said here that got good directions. I think it's a good idea. I think we should keep doing it.
All right. Rich?
I agree, it's a good idea. Look forward to the next one.
All right. The only thing I got is echo the same things. I appreciate that. I appreciated getting all the feedback we did. I'm happy to know that, you know, kind of saw eye to eye on a lot of the different, economic incentive programs and things like that. I know when it comes to some of the other stuff, like the event committee, maybe we have a difference of opinion, but I'll tell you what, I greatly appreciate the honesty with that. And I think as long as we're always cordial and stuff like that, it's about finding, you know, common ground and getting solutions. And I look forward to the fact that we sent a couple of these items off to the Plan Commission already, and we'll get them to do some work on it, and hopefully we'll be making some progress on getting some new economic opportunities in the city. So, all right, that's all I got on that. Now, I did write down closed session here, but because of the time, I know there's one topic, it's the long-term topic that we wanted to talk about. Unless somebody really wants to hang out for the next 30 minutes to talk about that, we're not pressed to talk about it. We can always do it at a future meeting.
I think we have time on that.
Yeah, okay. All right, so unless anybody has a reason, I'm just gonna skip over that one. Okay, in that case, thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate the open opportunities, and hopefully we'll get nice, good formal meetings at the formal meetings and good topics like this. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Baldridge,
Aye.
Udis.
Aye.
McDermott,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Kern.
Aye, thanks, everybody.
Good meeting.
Loves swinging that game.
Fourth time I've done it, fourth time? Did you ever say that to Dom? I mean, come on.